So, so I gather that we'll have various people. Roji, are you going to say something about Manipur and conflict transformation later?
Yes, Professor. Yes,
Oh,
Professor. I
good.
will talk about it. I will talk about
And Toshi about Japanese, Lillian about Lebanese and Arab. So we're going to hopefully we'll have and of course Muhammad Yassin from Pakistan, and this way at the end, the second part, we will in fact be able um, to fill in our own. So in other words, rather than just coming from the two speakers for today in the second session, you will have an opportunity to contribute and to create your own. Yeah, let's put it this way: we're going to create our own understanding of the different. Um, I don't know. When I'm looking at the screen, I see such a large figure of myself, and I really dislike looking at myself in the mirror. So I'm becoming a bit more sort of self-conscious. Okay, okay, good. Thank you. All right, now I'm not going to take any more time, but Mas Ari, do you want to make any announcements or
Yeah.
shall we go? Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. Just 1-2 minutes. There are two things that I would like to share. First of all, again, we really would like to apologize because we made some mistakes, on putting your names, family names in the Google form. So after, today, this morning, we'll try to coordinate within the organizing team, and then, because we got some input from WhatsApp group, right? Then we will use this as information to revise the Google form. That's the first thing, really apologize for this. And the second one, uh, you know, uh, we shared the Google form yesterday, and then when we checked this morning, there are two participants who hasn't picked up, a date for presentation tomorrow. So we send this Google form in WhatsApp group and also in my class, the announcement in my class, so that you can access it through these two ways, yeah, either in WhatsApp or in my class. So we really hope for those who haven't picked up the date or the time, you can do it today, so that hopefully at the end of this the second session, we can inform you all the things. That maybe we can also inform you the groups for the presentation. Yeah, so it will make us much more easy to divide, to organize for tomorrow. Thank you for all the helps.
So Mas Idam, did you say 2 or 25 participants?
25, folks.
25, yeah.
25,
So
yes.
we still have 25 more to fill in. So it's quite a large group of participants who have yet to sign up
Yeah.
for a time for the
Or if you have any
present.
difficulties, just let us know. So
Yeah,
we can
sure.
you can get information from you, feedback, for this presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
morning. Good morning, Professor. I have a little confirmation if I can ask.
Sure, please go ahead. Yeah.
For tomorrow's presentation, as we have to write a reflective paper, that will be an overview in tomorrow's presentation. So can we just, instead of writing on all the sessions, we can pick one of the session and write a complete paper
Yeah,
on that?
that's right, indeed. So what I suggested, it's just a suggestion. So the 5-minute presentation that you have, it can be on any aspect of the course
Right.
that we have covered. And what I did say, it can be an extract from your reflective paper. So I assumed that by now you would have had a bit of a draft. And so you
Yes.
can have just present an extract. And we unfortunately, well, not really unfortunately, but because we have so many participants, we have to keep it to 5 minutes. And
Not
this would be a good way. I mean, if I had to do this, I would have failed the test because I don't think I can ever keep to 5 minutes. So I'm sure that all of you are a lot more disciplined than I am.
No, thank you. We'll try to stick to the time limit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, any more questions and all ready? Okay, now,
Yes.
good. Okay, so every day I keep saying that I have the pleasure of introducing, a presenter, a speaker, and I often also say to you that the context, that how I know that person. Now, in the case of Joanne, she is probably the presenter that I know the longest of all the presenters that have done. And I'm going to embarrass Joanne and say that I've known her since she was a young girl, and she's still a young woman. Well, but I had the privilege of getting to know Joanne when she was embarking on her studies, and we talked about her work, and it's so gratifying, and so it's amazing to see how she has become very much a star in Malaysian studies as far as media is concerned. So she's the head of the School of Media. Please correct me, Joanne, if I got it wrong. But she's also the Associate Dean of the Nottingham University Malaysian campus, and a very highly sought after academic. She keeps moving from Monash to Nottingham in Malaysia, largely because of her expertise and knowledge in the whole area of media and communications. And so for this reason, I'm very pleased that she has agreed to give a talk to this course. And I'm not going to take any more time of what is going to be an extremely entertaining and engaging presentation. So thank you so much, Joanne. It's all yours now.
Thank you very much, Pak Elbert, and thank you all for actually making the time to come. Selamat datang, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here to speak. Of course, we're looking at media and peace building today. You've been through so many days, so many sessions, looking at peace building, conflict transformation, and perhaps this is one of the tools that you would find most important, actually, because this is what we do, this is what we use every day. So before we start, I'd like to do a little activity, actually, and if you all have your mobile phones with you, if you could kind of pick it up and perhaps turn it on, of course, get the passcode out of the way. And now that you've done that, everyone's got their mobile phones? Great.
Yes.
Okay, great. Now I'd like you to close your eyes and find the WhatsApp button on your phone without looking. And only open your eyes once you think you found it. And if you have, turn on your camera and show it to us. If you're in China and you probably don't have WhatsApp, or maybe you would. See, in China, you may have found a way around a firewall as well, so that's okay. I'm sure you'd have it. But if you don't, we'll call up Facebook in a while. So WhatsApp, have you found it? Let's see. Fantastic. WhatsApp.
I was wrong. No, I couldn't find it.
I did. Me too. I couldn't find it.
You couldn't find it. Let's try it again. Maybe because WhatsApp is not perhaps something that's that common. Let's try Facebook, which is said to be the #1 tool in many countries across the world that people use, the most popular platform. Let's look for Facebook. So close your eyes. And click on Facebook. Facebook. Okay, I should be ashamed of myself for being able to find and locate it so easily, but anyone found it? Some found Pokemon Go instead. Okay. Right. Maybe it's Telegram that you use. So before I actually talk about why we've done that activity, I'd like to test one more link, which is a platform that we will be using during this session actually. And I'd like to find out what sort of social media platforms you use. So I'm going to post this link on the chat bar, and if you can access it, if you can click on it, it will take you to mural.co. And you will see a lot of dots on the right of your screen. And I'd like you to pick a dot and place it on the social media platform that you use. You can pick several dots if you're using Facebook, if you're using Instagram. Fantastic. So this is just getting you to be familiar with this platform that we're going to use later for some of the activities during our session. If you've used Mural IT before, that's fantastic. So let's see. I didn't name the platforms because if you use it, you will be familiar with it. Of course, the top left is Facebook, followed by Instagram, Twitter. We've got Reddit at the bottom there, WhatsApp, Telegram, Weibo, YouTube, and TikTok. Okay. So this actually shows the age group we're in, to be honest, because if you do this experiment with a young group, everything, all the dots will gravitate to TikTok because that's a very young platform. And that actually has been said to have overtaken Facebook.
I have 23 and I don't have Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. I'm a very strange person.
That is not strange at all, Sarah. I think that is a choice that many people have made. And, you know, we've named it JOMO, right? We've come so far from, you know, a phase called FOMO, which is a fear of missing out, to JOMO, which is a joy of missing out. And that is actually a conscious effort to remove oneself from all social media platforms. So no, I think, you know, many people are aligned to your to your efforts to detach perhaps from social media. But really, is it possible to do so? We see a lot of dots on WhatsApp. That's good. Someone has even blackened Instagram or put a yellow post-it on Instagram as a sign of resistance, perhaps. Okay. That's great. Do we know how many participants we have right now?
29.
29. Okay. All right. That's why I'm not seeing 60 over dots on this. Okay. That's fine. That's perfect. And that's great. I'm going to stop sharing the screen now, but of course you can continue playing with those dots as a form of doodling during the session. Okay. Right. So what is the point of all this? Yeah. And I think you would have already guessed it, right? The point is that, you know, we are all media users. We are all prosumers, right? If you know, you've heard of Axel Bruns, who've used the term prosumers, has introduced us to that term. It's basically to define us individuals as both users and producers on social media, right? So that's how I want to approach this topic. It's a very broad topic, media and peace building. So what does media constitute, right? And so this is what it is. We're going to look at media, not just kind of traditional legacy media as in journalism, but also particularly social media, because we're so online these days, especially given the COVID situation. And media involves us all. Yeah, it's important to think that way. And it's not just the journalists. So we produce and we disseminate information about ourselves, about others, our views. Maybe Sarah removed herself from Facebook because she's just fed up of looking at people, taking photos of what they eat or doing selfies, and some have removed themselves because of hate speech. Yeah, and that is very real. That is truly a struggle that people find themselves in more and more these days. So sometimes we post and we disseminate information more than we consume it, which is, what's more worrying is that we do it unknowingly and unconsciously. We don't know necessarily that we are more producers than consumers on social media. Yeah. And guess what? It's not just us that's doing it unconsciously and unknowingly. Yeah. When we like a post, when we love a picture on Instagram, when we follow, when we retweet, when we forward on WhatsApp, we are sending signals, symbols, propagating an ideology. We're influencing our friends and friends of friends. Yeah, that's the key to polarization, to be honest. Perpetuating an idea that gets carried forward in ways that we have no control over the moment it leaves our keyboard or our mobile phone, and the moment you hit send or post, it goes out. And what's more, when all that is happening, we are also sending increasingly amount of data to platform companies, people who own Facebook, Instagram, etc., who are able then to use algorithms to further manipulate us, align us, influence us, control us. You know all about the filter bubble, I'm sure. So imagine if we only liked, loved, followed, tweeted, retweeted, and forwarded a message about peace and supporting peace building. Imagine if that was, what we did with social media. Yeah. Imagine a one positive message reaching 1,000 people within minutes of dissemination. Imagine what that would do. Sure, so you may say, okay, that sounds easy enough, media peace building, then that's the way to go. That's how we build peace. But hey, we are battling with so much more. Firstly, because positive messages take much longer to spread, thanks to the decades of human conditioning that make us desire for what is sensational. We know that about the media. We know that about the human spirit as well, isn't it? We are attracted to what emotionally arouses us. Anger and hate excites many of us. Maybe not here on this session, of course. But today we are facing that. The world is facing that. And we are affected with a virus that is actually as contagious, or is actually even more contagious than COVID-19. Maria Ressa, if you know her, calls this the virus of lies, particularly in the virtual world. So if you're infected with this virus and someone brings you the truth or a fact, you are likely to reject it. You're likely to disbelieve it, as your cognitive bias is already set in place. And when your shared reality is torn apart, you'll be quick to dismiss it. And this virus changes your worldview, and it really takes a really long time to cure it. Yeah, so that is the danger of it. This attraction to what is not positive. Yeah, and the length of time it takes to actually spread a positive, peaceful message. People are not excited about it, right? But there is still a way. All is not lost, right? With this realization, hopefully we can make a difference, because we can use media for the greater good, for peace building. All right, I'm going to share my screen. I realized I have not shared the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Fantastic. Yes. Okay. So that's us. Today's session will consist of 2 parts. As we begin by defining our parameters, we're going to look at who are the actors in the media platforms, what are the key elements of peace journalism, and how should this extend beyond legacy or traditional media and professional journalism. Yeah, we will also reflect on the S words of social media, as highlighted by Lisa Skirch in our prescribed reading. I hope everyone managed to access that reading. And then we'll have an activity before the break. And then we return for part 2, which will outline key patterns, recommended actions, and proposes a new media ecosystem before we end the session today. So very quickly then, this particular bubble here, as you can see, how many of these words associated with new media technology are we familiar with? Can you add to this? So we see many nations today divided because of disinformation and hate speech, alarming polarization caused by algorithmic extremism, right? And this is pretty much the filter bubble that we hear of today as well. There's immense distrust in the system. And of course, there's immense distrust in each other as well, as it becomes impossible to verify deep fakes. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard of that term. Fake news is everywhere. We are hardly aware if we're being influenced by automated bots and cyber troopers working for a particular political party, for example. We have a lot of that, unfortunately, in Malaysia. And we are being increasingly radicalized as a society. I don't know if you've heard of the rabbit hole story. This one here. So this rabbit hole story is, of course, from Alice in Wonderland, and Alice in Wonderland literally falls down the hole of the white rabbit, taking her to Wonderland. So in this case, falling down the rabbit hole meant entering a strange and absurd alternative universe, which many believe was supposed to represent a psychedelic experience. But that's what's happening to us on the internet. And this is what Mark Ledwidge had mentioned. He said, to increase ad revenue and keep watching and keep you watching, YouTube recommends increasingly extreme content. And this is how they have you believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. So, I mean, reflect on your day today. And, what were the 6 impossible things that you found out? I'm sure you can identify some, isn't it? Sometimes we get, those prompts about some kitchen hacks or something, or how do you use something in a way that you've never used it before, and suddenly, you're made to feel rather incompetent, etc. I mean, this is what YouTube does. It recommends increasingly extreme content. All right. Another account relating to algorithmic extremism was actually evidence in the Wall Street Journal, and they shared that YouTube videos more often recommended conspiracy theories, partisan viewpoints, and misleading videos over reputable, boring videos representing fact-based reporting. That's truly unfortunate, yeah, and which is what we talked about earlier, about positive messages and peace messages spreading, very slowly compared to anything that's to do with anger, violence, hatred that excites people. So increasingly, corporations have monetized private data and found ways to harness this addiction-prone attention economy. If you read Lisa Search, she mentions this as well in the reading. So this attention-prone addiction, whereby social media platforms aim to keep users online and rely on algorithms to show us content that will emotionally arouse us and reinforce the worst aspects of humanity. And here are some words as well that you'd be familiar with, right? If conflicts are to be prevented or resolved, they must first be understood. So media have played a disruptive role in many conflicts, and I'm sure you would have a lot of examples to share as well from your own countries. But media can also play a positive role. I think we need to be mindful of that and hold on to that hope, right? Particularly when integrated with an overarching peace building strategy. Hopefully we will attempt to build this strategy today if we have the time, yeah? Free and independent media can also foster democracy. And what we are seeing then is that this is something we need to bear in mind, because in many ways we have neglected the media and we've turned to an oversaturated social media instead. So free and independent media and their role is also something that we need to bear in mind. I don't know if we have journalists here in the group, but I'm sure you'll be able to share some of your experience as well. And please feel free to do so. Stop me at any point, or put something on the chat. And what we need to understand is there needs to be a collective action to restore trust in the system, to resolve conflict, and to combat climate change. COVID-19, you would have experienced firsthand the amount of fake news and disinformation or misinformation about this virus that has caused so much chaos, frustration, even death. And as social media users, we also need to work collectively to address issues such as health and food scarcity, for example. Yeah, but collective action here is not just civil society. So, don't think it's all on our shoulders, although many times we find that, it's the civil society groups and the activists that, come up and, do something, put something together for the greater good. But actually, collective action here also involves and must involve platform tech companies, businesses, governments, academia, NGOs, activist groups, etc. And media can be used to also ensure checks and balances in the system, to hold the government accountable. Yeah. So blockchain protocols, if you're familiar with that term, can actually be put in place to ensure this and to uphold the internet as a truly decentralized space that's not manipulated or dominated by a single autonomous entity. Yeah. But civil society must want this enough to push for platform companies to embed and implement these kind of blockchain protocols, etc., and for governments to actually stick by it. Do you think it sounds utopian? Look, there are several countries already successfully implementing this, yeah, or at least at the pilot stage. So Singapore's President's Challenge 2021, if you look it up, they are calling for a digitally inclusive society. Indonesia and the Philippines with their digital policy, how successful is this? Or do you reckon it's kind of just perhaps lip service? Maybe not. Yeah, we actually do see governments, committing to this social cohesion, using digital social media to ensure that there is an inclusive society. Japan has called for a society 5.0. They are far more advanced, right? In its 5th Science and Technology Basic Plan. Society 5.0, they've defined it as a kind of human-centered society that balances economic advancement with the resolution of social problems by a system that highly integrates cyberspace, which is virtual space, and physical real space. So that kind of integration is what Japan is calling for. So the aim of Society 5.0, having come from the 4th Industrial Revolution, of course, to Society 5.0 is to create a society where social challenges are resolved by incorporating the innovations of the 4th Industrial Revolution, i.e. the Internet of Things, big data, artificial intelligence, and the sharing economy into industry and social life. So the individual society becomes the core and not the technology. And that is so important. And so it strives to actually tackle any aspects of society like healthcare, mobility, infrastructure, politics, government, economy, and the industry on a whole. I recently read a comment on social media regarding the use of AI in governance, whereby the person said, the checks and balances of democratic governments were invented because human beings themselves realized how unfit they were to govern themselves. So very soon AI will become this magic ball where you just plug in the rules and it does the rest. Is that what we are, looking forward to? I conducted a recent survey actually of Southeast Asia, where I asked people whether they thought, members of parliament and politicians should give up their seats and be replaced by artificial intelligence. And believe it or not, 90% said, yes, sure, why not? Let's give it a try. I mean, look, that's worrying, but that just reflects how fed up and frustrated people are with their leaders. Have we really come to this? So I thought it'd be useful at this point to draw upon the work of Manuel Castells. I know you see a lot of kind of words here, but I'll try and zoom in. Otherwise, I will share this, of course, at the end, so you can have a look at it further. But I think the work of Manuel Castells is really important here because it kind of grounds everything, the way we think about, the network society, about the media and this network society that we belong to. Yeah, of course, he wrote a trilogy, The Rise of the Network Society, The Power of Identity, and End of Millennium, where he talks about this network society. And I'd like to pick out a few quotes that actually shows us what we need to know about the media before we can start thinking about how to use it meaningfully as an instrument of peace. And he says here, power does not reside in institutions, not even the state or large corporations. It is located in the networks that structure society. And so the key word here is networks. And if the information age was more focused on centralized network, we are now experiencing a more distributed network, as you can see here. Perhaps this is something that these are network typologies, yeah? And this is the regular small world, random, centralized, okay? Right now we're kind of distributed, yeah? Which can be a good and bad thing, either way. Again, when you talk about social media and its capacities, capabilities as a tool, there's always that good and bad of it. If you recall, also later on, we'll reflect on this, what Lisa Skirch said about the S words, right? But I'd like us to think of media in the form of networks that we connect to and which connect us to each other via the internet and mobile phones. Yeah, but he says something further as well, Manuel Castells. He said, yet the main issue is not the shaping of the minds by explicit messages in the media, but the absence of a given content in the media. Here is where it gets more challenging. That all the while we think it's what we see or read that shapes our perception, but in fact, it is the symbolic, the hidden ideologies embedded in something that is perhaps seemingly innocent, like a meme or a GIF that actually incites hatred and violence, and we don't know it yet. So politicians, media giants, business giants, they all use media and social media today to shape public minds via the symbolic. Yeah, we think about marketing, the quick quotes, the motivation, etc., to partake of a particular ideology, to buy a product. Essentially, we don't know what we're getting sucked into and when. Indeed, the media are not the holders of power, but they constitute by and large the space where power is decided. Yeah. And we look at the Facebook contagion, for example, as you can see here. Right? And this determines the type of friends we invite and accept requests from. Friends of friends feed polarization, that's what we said earlier. And it influences how people make decisions, what movies to watch, what new hobbies to pick up. Yeah. And we're all part of this. Yeah, except for Sarah, maybe. We're all spreading, this Facebook contagion, as long as we're attached to one or more social media platforms. All right. And so Michel Foucault gets us to think further about fascism and how it causes us to love power, to desire the very thing that dominates and exploits us. And this fascism is easily put into practice online, and social media perpetuates this love for power, feeds it even. So what's the biggest driver or motivation that differentiates how we relate to and use media today? Community involvement. Yeah. And I'd like to highlight this quote from Henry Jenkins. The ability to participate in conversations, produce content, even act as gatekeepers, calling out untruths, are all part of what we recognize as participatory culture, which, as Henry Jenkins states, shifts the focus of literacy from one individual expression to community involvement. That's power there. And I cite Jenkins because this participatory culture is one of the most important tools that drives this sense of belonging and that mobilizes people as well. Yeah, you feel you belong to this community. And this is also why violence, online violence, doesn't stay online. It inevitably erupts in the social world because of this sense of community, this sense of belonging. And so just imagine if a rumor forwarded by 1,000 people can change the course of politics, what more can it do to foster peace? So media thrives on what we have come to know so well and are clearly a part of, and that is the social network. Okay. So I hope you bear with me as I'm trying to, ground this session in this manner. So what is a social network? Yeah, it's a set of nodes as we know it, connections between people, connections between nodes consisting of a finite set of actors as well. Yeah, so on social media, as you can see in this diagram here, which is terribly chaotic, it looks like, right? This is, of course, if you run a visualization, a graphic visualization software to capture how information is communicated online, this will be how it looks like. And it just shows how increasingly interconnected we are. And while it seems chaotic, this kind of analysis shows us how important individual nodes are to the ability of the network to communicate. So every retweet, every repost, every forwarded message is captured here. And for platform companies, it shows them who are the key players, these bigger round bubbles here. It shows platform companies who are the key players in the network. And for the state, for the government, it shows if there are also isolated parts of the network. Now, this can be a threat, of course, a risk. And some platform companies have been asked to remove this feature of being able to see where the isolated parts of the network are, etc., because that is a form of surveillance as well, isn't it? So all our data can feed into this surveillance activity by a state. And so while we understand the workings of the network society, the powerful tool of the media to enable participatory culture via social networks is actually to look at intent. We need to look at intent. Yeah, so I mean, there's this little thing here that says sketch your own social network. Perhaps you can attempt that and see how interconnected you are, if you can. Perhaps it's a distributed, perhaps it's a decentralized kind of typology, but it's interesting to try and discover that. So if you look at intent, it's important to analyze how we use social media and social networks. Is it to threaten or to protect? And you may recall the 2019 attacks in Christchurch by an individual who was radicalized online and live streamed the attacks on Facebook. And I didn't want to dwell too much on this, because we're talking about intent. On the other spectrum, we also remember the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, where 4.4 million tweets of the hashtag Ice Bucket Challenge was actually collected. Yeah, I mean, how many of us participated in this challenge when it first happened? Do we know what the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge is? It's quite an old challenge that came out several years ago. Some of you may have some memories of participating in it. Yeah, it collected 1 billion YouTube views, 10 billion Facebook video views, and most importantly, of course, because this was to advance the awareness about ALS. Yeah, it was about fundraising, and so $220 million were raised for this campaign. And in 31 days, ALS raised $100 million. In the previous year, it had raised 2.5 million. So there was a 40 times increase. Yeah. And the best part of it all was that it cost them nothing. These drivers of the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge campaign to raise funds didn't have to spend anything, right? They used tweets, videos, Facebook to promote this, and people started to come on board, challenge themselves, challenge each other, and this is what we found, right? So 2 different ways of using the media. Can you name any other examples? Here's the Ice Bucket Challenge, where you're supposed to pour ice cold water on someone, and really it's to give you that experience, yeah, of what it might be like to actually have ALS. Can I just check here if you see some green lines appearing on the screen?
Yes,
or is
from the picture.
Yeah, okay, right. I thought that was rather weird. I don't know where it comes from though. But while I try and get rid of that, perhaps some of you can share if you have any kind of experience, with regards to the use of social media that came up with the kind of positive outcome, that you participated in a challenge, perhaps, of something that was kind of peace related.
Can I say something?
Sure. Please.
Okay, hi. I'm Ines. I'm involved with the Orang Asli community, and I set up the Rumah Baca. What happened is that, a bunch of my girlfriends, they are Spartan Mom crew. Yeah. So what we did was that they initiated a program, and a mini program where we have exercises, and collaborative within a few teams, from the gyms, and also we have our runs, we clock in our time and to raise fund. And amazing, we have collected, like the past, we have done 3 sessions. We have collected for about almost 100,000.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah,
really
thank you. And another group of young doctors, what they did was that they know about my project Susu. It's a milk project for the indigenous children. And what happened is that they do challenges among them. And that's where I get my fund for the Susu.
That's fantastic.
And another group, international school, St. Joseph, the mothers, they raise fund for Kasut, Project Kasut, shoe projects for the indigenous. And they have collected 15,000.
Right, that's fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing. And this was, did they use the media to drive this?
Yes, they use their own media, their social medias, and they create awareness. They're collaborating with me. I'm blessed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's fantastic. And so, there is so much of opportunities there to actually use media and social media for the greater good, and indeed to propagate peace. Yeah. And so this growing significance of online platforms is actually causing governments around the world to consider kind of platform liability and the policing of online speech. Now, that isn't as positive, of course. This policing of online speech can again be good and bad. Yeah. As the digitization of conflict continues, governments can actually do more to enforce platform companies' commitments to transparency reporting, proactive enforcement of community standards against violence and conflict, and support for civil society peace-building efforts like what Ines was sharing about earlier. The government can come into play even more, not to oppress and not to police online speech in that manner, but actually to encourage platform companies to give more support to these kind of civil society groups. And of course, many of the major platforms have already committed to these principles, such as you saw earlier, the 2019 Christchurch call to eliminate terrorist and violent extremist content online. And this was a pledge made by governments and technology companies after what happened here. So one thing must be said, though, that the policing of online speech cannot and must not impede on the freedom of speech. So on the one hand, we're worried about all these kind of hate speech, etc., that's gone online, but on the other hand, one cannot police it so much so that there is no more freedom of speech online, that the voiceless remain voiceless, and so on. So human rights and freedom of expression must be upheld and respected at all times. So while there is a need to revise the code of practice and protect society from manipulation, from large-scale disinformation, we must acknowledge that this is actually a societal problem. Yeah, it's not just about the platforms. Okay, I can't seem to get rid of that green thing that's scrolled on my screen here. It kind of follows this Prezi when I move it around the screen. So I'll try and resolve it later. Yeah.
Dr. Joanne?
Yes.
This is Julius here.
Hi, Julius.
You can go to the eraser. There's one of the tools in the PowerPoint.
Oh, erase, but I'm not using PowerPoint, you see. I'm using Prezi, and there doesn't seem to be. Yeah, it's
okay.
just.
Can you click on it?
I can't.
Okay.
Yeah, it's unclickable.
I thought we are using PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And if you say you click present.
Let me see.
It's terribly odd.
Let me see how.
Present
okay,
in the right
share.
Can I give an example while you try to get rid? Hi, Dr. Joanne. I am Alejandra. I'm from Colombia. I'm a journalist myself. I am a communication studies teacher myself, and I directed a project of students project on the graduated project. They designed a blog to create stories of the guerrilla members, of 3 guerrilla members who have been getting back to society after 50 years of war in Colombia. After the peace process, there was a process of reinsertion, getting back to civil and normal life. And they created a blog with all the stories of these 3 persons. And it was wonderful. It got a prize because of the design and because of all the stories that got involved, showing these guerrilla members not only as warriors and not only as perpetrators of the war, but also as human beings, just telling their stories, everyday stories. So that's another example of how the media can help this building.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for that. I mean, this is a very, very good example of actually using media, social media, digital media, to actually tell stories, right? This whole idea of digital storytelling is about, showcasing a side of community or a side of an individual where other people have not, may not know about, right? And to use these stories to inspire. So digital storytelling, using narratives to actually spread peace, humanizing it. And we will see this later on in a very quick kind of chart that differentiates kind of peace journalism with war journalism, right? And peace journalism is very much about humanizing, whereas, you know, the war journalism is of course about dehumanizing. And so, you know, what Alejandra has just shared earlier is precisely this, the need to humanize, the need to share more of these kind of stories, you know, of individuals, you know, using social media as a tool. And there's so many creative ways to do this. And the blog, if you can share even the link, Alejandra, that'll be fantastic, you know, because it's all to do with colors and symbols and all that's being used as well to how do we attract people to, you know, actually want to participate, to want to, you know, look in the blog and, you know, scroll and click, right? And so, you know, there's a psychology behind that as well, actually. And, you know, it'll be fantastic to see this blog, Alejandra. So please do share.
I'm going to look for it. Okay, just I'm going to take a look. Thank you.
Sure. I think I've rectified that horrible screen.
Yes, it works.
Okay, and so you know, I'm not going to go through these stats so much, but what I just wanted to highlight here, and this is from We Are Social 2021, they've done this research across the world, yeah. So just some quick stats to show us how dependent we are on digital media, and it shows us, you know, reasons for using social media, as you can see here. Okay, it shows us reasons for using the internet, how global internet users aged 16 to 64 are using the internet, yeah? And of course, the daily time spent using the internet. You can find your country here. Malaysia, where I come from, is here. It's the 6th bar. Of course, Philippines tops it all. On average, users spend 10.56 hours on the internet each day. And that's a huge amount of time that one spends on the internet. And imagine, yeah, again, this tool that dominates our lives, right? Because you remove kind of 10 hours there and another perhaps 6 hours of sleeping time, what gets done in between, you know, we're online all the time. But what's important to highlight here is that people are staying up to date with news and current events on social media. And if you see, what are the reasons for using the internet? It is for finding information. So should we be worried? I mean, in the past, when we ask somebody, they'll say, oh yes, just to message a few friends and to keep in touch. But this is where people are going to find information and to stay up to date with news and current affairs. They've kind of completely left perhaps a newspaper and the TV. Yeah, and we know that for a fact already. In 2020, at least 81 countries used social media to spread disinformation about politics. And disinformation hinders peace building. So this is what we're coming up against, you know. We are peace builders. If that's what we claim we are, then, you know, we are up against disinformation because that just hinders peace building. And given that social media platforms are not required to play the role, the editor role, to verify information, it has actually become easier for the makers of conspiracies and falsehoods to pollute the information ecosystem with poisonous and partisan ideas. Yeah, so that's where it gets very difficult there. To understand the shift towards getting news via social media, it is very important to understand the wider information ecosystem. Yeah. So here it's important to look at the role of legacy media, all right, as well as compare this to social media as well. So legacy media refers to, as you know it, newspapers, magazines, radio, and television modes of communication that are primarily one way, right, with news editors making decisions about what news will be delivered to the public. In legacy media, news journalists reports, they investigate and they analyze information. Now, social media platforms are not news producers. They do not pay journalists to produce information. You're not paid to disseminate your information, unless, of course, you become very popular on YouTube, and then you get paid, right? Rather, they make it possible for anyone to produce and share information. In legacy media, news editors decide which stories to distribute. Yeah? News editing ensures that someone is hopefully accountable for distributing true information, as editors can actually face legal consequences for selling false news, right? That's something they hold on to. That's a kind of code of conduct, code of ethics, well, at least perhaps in some countries. But that's professional journalism for you. That's legacy media. On social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, current laws in most countries do not require these platforms to counter false information, meaning no one can be held legally liable for distributing false information. At present, without examining the social media by conflict parties and the impact these communities or these communication platforms have on the conflict trajectory, the conflict parties and their constituencies, and the broader conflict context. So in essence, any intervention into conflict or efforts to build peace must consider the role of social media. And that's why we're talking about this today as well. But telling someone to just stop using social media in a negative way that they've been using it just won't get us very far, isn't it? It's like telling someone that smoking is bad for them. They already know it's bad for them. And so, the chances of getting them to change their habit would be increasingly immensely difficult. So how do you get them to quit? To adopt a new strategy. We have to adopt this new strategy. And who is this we? So if you look at the actors here, this is where I'm getting to. We would encompass the various key actors, including businesses, government, state, tech companies, academia, civil society groups, NGOs, individuals, and activists. All of us need to get involved, regardless of the hat that we wear. And sometimes it overlaps as well, and that's fine. Yeah. But before we attempt to strategize, I thought it would be useful to highlight a summary of Galtung's 1998 model, which actually outlines the differences between peace journalism and war journalism. This is what I promised earlier. So as mentioned earlier, this shouldn't be seen as a guide for hard journalism, for legacy media, but a model we must adopt to actually check ourselves and our posts before disseminating or posting anything. So what you will see on the left under peace journalism is a kind of general win-win orientation, not an us versus them kind of framing. Yeah. So be mindful of what we're sharing here on media. There is transparency in peace journalism, giving voice to all parties, humanized and not dehumanizing. And we need to be proactive instead of reactive. That's all part of peace journalism. It is also truth-oriented, aiming at uncovering all cover-ups, calling out what is untrue, really. And is also people-oriented, so focusing on everyone's suffering, for example, not just being biased on siding the elites. Yeah. For peace to occur, the focus must be on promoting non-violence and creativity. So one needs to highlight peace initiatives, stories of resolution, reconstruction and reconciliation, right? So let's keep this in mind for a while as we reflect on the 12 S words of social media that was put forward by Lisa Church. Do you have any thoughts on this before I move on? Right? Okay, so just bear this in mind, and think not just about the kind of news reporting that we normally see, but also in the sharing and dissemination of kind of information that we come across every day as well, or what we produce and disseminate ourselves. Okay. So if you looked at Lisa's sketch, if you managed to have some time to read the reading that was prescribed, she actually says that communication on the internet is distinct from other legacy forms of communication in at least 12 ways. She very cleverly puts all the S's in front there. And these 12 words all start with the letter S. Yeah, and so they are the S words. all right? And they are powerful swords, as she calls it as well, yeah? So each of the 12 characteristics holds a positive and a negative potential for society, yeah, either or. So speed can be seen as positive, it can also be negative, the speed of messages being spread. And like a sword, social media can spur people to kill or serve as a tool for mobilizing citizens to defend peace and democracy. Okay, so if you have a look at some of the examples she's given here, which speed, digital technologies enable instantaneous communication, right? And so she talks about how India then, used, for example, the context of India and how a false message on social media accusing outsiders of kidnapping local children spread instantaneously on social media, leading to a mob that killed 2 tourists, quite similar to the earlier 2019 Christchurch incident. But in Egypt, on the positive side, the speed of communication enabled democracy protest organizers to rapidly spread information to mobilize collective action. And so there's scale as well, yeah? Digital technologies enable a single person to send message accessible by hundreds, thousands, or millions of people. So in Brazil, which is one of the examples she states, highlights an individual could start a false rumor about a political candidate that could reach millions of people all over the country on WhatsApp. But in Jordan, a single humanitarian could post a message offering assistance that could reach thousands of Syrian refugees. And she goes on to talk about scope, to talk about searchable, secrecy, space, speech freedom, surveillance, swift development, sticker price, simple, and social confidence. Yeah, social confidence meaning people endorse information on social media by sharing it with their friends. And so again, this can be used in either a positive or negative manner. And I hope you will, access this reading and have a look at some of the examples that she's given on the kind of positive and negative, because we're going to try and do this in a while on the mural platform as well, because I would like to ask you to think of 3 positive ways that your country perhaps have used social media. And one of the S's here, yeah. In Malaysia, I can perhaps think of 3, all right? Swift developments, let's say. I think civil society groups in Malaysia use social media to encourage people to vote in elections. And that was what we saw, during the recent general elections that of course toppled the earlier government, and they had been, in power for the longest time. So that was how, social media was used in terms of, swift development as a feature. I could think of simple as well in the Malaysian context. Civil society easily participated in discussions about, social, cultural, and political issues via online platforms. But then again, this is not necessarily true all the time, because you also know, perhaps you've heard that, some of the bloggers in Malaysia have been arrested, harassed, not for their own content, but because of an act called Section 114A that was enforced to hold all responsible or accountable for content site. So you didn't say it, but someone else posted it, and they're still accountable, they're still arrested. So while it is simple, the S word there, it may not be all that safe. So there's no speech freedom, for example, or very much lack of it in Malaysia. The third example that I could maybe bring up from Malaysia is that activists, the S word of secrecy, right? Whereby activists use encrypted services like Telegram that protect their privacy to ensure they would safely share information during the Bersih rally. The Bersih rally was held, to promote and to advocate for free and fair elections. And there were thousands, perhaps, of people who had congregated in Kuala Lumpur, in the main town, main city. And there was this rally that was being held, and of course people were texting each other using Telegram to ensure that their privacy was kept. Yeah, and they could share information about where where the tankers were and so on and so forth. Yeah, where to avoid, which roads to avoid, and so on. So secrecy was used in that sense to keep people safe during a rather peaceful rally. So perhaps you can, like I said, think of a few ways that your country has used the S words in a positive way. Yeah, and we can perhaps do this activity during the break. I'll share a link with you later. Actually, let's do it now. Okay, if you go to your chat bar, and if you have any questions, wait, I'm looking at the chat now, and some of you have posted some things.
Yes, I do have a question regarding this S word social media that you showing us. What happened in the countries that where the media control is so hard that social media barely exists? I'm thinking of China or Cuba, or they have to find other ways to communicate, not through the official media, governmental official media. Yeah. What happens there?
Yeah, so because civil society is very resourceful, isn't it? And on the one hand, there's civil society, and on the other hand, there's also platform companies that will also find ways to develop these kind of software and tools that will perhaps help civil society to break through the firewall, like I mentioned earlier, right? You can't perhaps get Facebook and WhatsApp especially Facebook in China, but there are ways to prevent this. There are ways to get around it and still to get these message out. In Myanmar, for example, and what happened recently, actually, these platform companies would then develop something like Weibo. So, within China, then since they can't use Facebook or WhatsApp, they use Weibo. And that allows, and I find that because civil society is so resourceful, that there will always be this possibility. But yes, I understand where you're coming from as well, Alejandro. I think you're talking about the fear and the threat, yeah, that people would experience as well, even though you manage to get through that firewall, even though you're communicating on a different platform. One feels threatened because knowing that the government bans this, knowing that there is a harsh enforcement of law that says you cannot speak out against the government using any of these platforms. How do people use social media? How do people still communicate? And so I think what's important is for civil society to actually push platform companies, yeah, to embed these sort of blockchain protocols, if you like, or protocols into the system that would either block or disable this surveillance to happen. And I'm not just kind of talking from thin air. Actually, Facebook recently boasted that because of what happened in Myanmar, they have enabled this lock profile feature, whereby you can lock your profile and then you won't be discovered or you won't be discoverable by the government, and this would be kind of anti-surveillance, for example, yeah, so that people can actually have a profile and still share information and post information. So that's one. The other function that Facebook
Can
just
I share
recently.
something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
It's sorry. Okay. It's also happened recently when everything happened between Israel and Palestine, because the Facebook were hiding a lot of comments and hiding the people and hiding the stories. For example, if the people post some stories on Instagram, it hides the total number of visiting or engagements. They reduce these things. So it's all about the platforms companies that they can play with us on all around the world, I guess.
Yes, that is true as well. So platform companies are not the savior here. Yeah, and certainly, Facebook, while they may have done this, perhaps, like I said, disabling, the comment section, or, users to still own this data, to still being monetized, and that's the problem, right? So who knows, again, platform companies are not necessarily detached from the state or the governments. This can really be the data that's being fed to the state, and politicians, in fact, to further manipulate the masses, right? There was a recent study that was being done as well that showed how, on the one hand, there's a filter bubble, yeah? We know that, the filter bubble then, gets you to, for example, if you are given these sort of video that in America, although you are aligned to the left wing, you're constantly fed information from the right, actually, to sway you. So, that kind of control really just throws everything, into a kind of, a chaos, if I could use that word, because again, on the one hand, we understand that, it feeds polarization, isn't it? Friends of friends, the filter bubble. And if you're aligned to one side, you will continuously be affected with that virus, so to speak, to further align yourself with that. But on the other hand, when control is overtaken and manipulated and dominated by platform companies, perhaps who are being paid by the government or by any kind of media giant and so on, people can still be manipulated the other side, from the left to the right or right to the left. And so, you're absolutely right, Ayat, in actually raising that point. I'm scrolling through the chat. Dating, you're probably in China. Most in China, if they want to see the outside, there are always ways to transgress. Maybe you can share your experience, Dating.
And also maybe we can talk, for example, about Korea, that they are hiding everything literally about them, that it's different world, that we don't know anything related to them because they hide everything from the social media. And even, for example, in China, they created, I know that they want to have a better economy and they created their own social media, but also it gives the people that they are not aware with everything happening on the world because they have certain platforms that they can only use it.
Yes, that's right. And this is the threat. We'll come to Tuba in a minute. I see your hands raised there, but you're absolutely right, Ayat, in raising that. Who knows what's behind, right? Who knows who's posting this information? Who are the bots? Who are the cyber troopers? When do they, organize and post stuff to us? How is it being fed to us? And how will we be able to verify this information and know who's speaking to us, in fact? And so that is why there's so much of distrust that's taking place in the media. And we distrust each other. We don't even know whether, Ayat is Ayat. I mean, of course, we know you are who you are here. But, in that sense, you've heard of the sock puppet as well, sock puppet accounts. Tomorrow you wake up and there's another Ayat. And there's another Ines, for example. And you see your picture there, you've also posted some things that are quite personal, but actually it's not you. It didn't come from you, but they are about you. So, where does it end? How can you stop this? Is it even possible? And how does that impact peace building? I mean, at the end of the day, we keep coming back to this, right? There's so much of information, so much of distrust. How do we deal with this? That's actually the second section, part of this session. But let's hear from Tuba.
Hi, doctor.
Hi.
I just want to add, like in Pakistan and other countries, political campaigns move towards the social media. And it was producing disinformation and fake news as well. Like if any protest or any leader is doing any jalsa or something, then the teams against them are vandalizing them on their behavior, on their clothes, like they are wearing $400 shoes, they are wearing these diamonds, they are wearing these type of Armani suits, so they are not a public servant. Like they are vandalizing on that, on their appearances, on their choices, on the social media, and spreading this information in Pakistan and using the tweets around it and Twitters, or like everything moved towards the social media in the political sense, if may I say.
Yes,
It's all over the world. I just want to add this type of thing, like we are using it and we are questioning their choices on the social media and making mind of other people against and pro them too.
That's right. That's right, Tuba. Thank you so much. And there's a lot of hate speech as well, isn't it? Like you said, targeting people, politicians, against politicians, civil society, and so on and so forth. So that's certainly a very good point that you raised there. Thanks, Tuba. Irfan, you have your hands up.
Yeah, hi, doctor. I also want to share something related to social media because I think it's necessary to share it. I mean, earlier, before the social media was not mobilized much, it was like, if a state has, banned someone from having media talks and stuff related to, mostly the politicians. So when a state banned him, so he had no way to communicate to its people. But nowadays, currently in this generation that we're living in, like in Pakistan, a politician was banned from, having media talks or talking to the people. But he used the platform of social media. And although the state media has blocked him from doing his press conference, but it was on aired on the social media. So I think that it is posing a threat to any country, not just Pakistan. I just mentioned Pakistan as an example, but it's posing a threat across the countries across the world. Because if you ban someone, okay, you can ban it on the state media, but you cannot ban him on electronic media such as like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. So like currently a person is being banned from having doing his press conference or say whatever he wants to, but still he tweets every day, he gives video messages through social media, and the message is being conveyed. So it is posing a threat, I think.
Yes, that's right. Thanks, Irfan. That's so true. And again, social media can be used in that way. Of course, the threat is there, but when one is banned, there are again many ways to get the news out there. And if it's positive, peaceful news, I must add. Yeah, we're not here to advocate, for helping each other to kind of share news that will incite violence and hatred. But this is where peace builders come together, isn't it? You form this network, and if you're banned, let's say in China or in Pakistan or in Malaysia, there are ways to still reach out to people, even though you're not allowed to go on social media or use that platform. You can actually find a way to send it to someone else within your network who is in another part of the world, and perhaps get that person to share it. And that's also what actually took place in Myanmar. To be honest, this is what I had noted information, two others was further, in that, Irfan, I'm looking at to everyone for all your comments here as well. Dating says with Tuba, and what's the difference? What kind of platforms are we using? Yeah, and what are the news that's being spread as well? Certainly. So, what is fake and what is not? What is the truth? Is there even, is there even truth spreading anywhere? anymore, right? And that's why we need to step up, right? That's why people like us, ourselves, civil society, need to call out this untruths, this fake news. And I'd just like to bring up a very simple example of what was started here in Malaysia, this movement by a civil society group. Young people, actually, they call themselves Fact Check Lab, FAQ Check Lab, LAB. And they've set up this platform whereby, it's a voluntary initiative, whereby they would actually check all the kind of news that comes up on social media that's being posted or shared. And they would actually verify it based on various platforms and resources and post, their analysis of this. So, there is this community fact-checking platform that people have set up. And this can take place as well in various countries. And I'm sure it has in many different countries. And that's one way to counter disinformation. That's one way to counter fake news. Yeah, to kind of come together and help each other to spread the truth or facts, at least, or investigative information, so that we're more aware. And of course, I mean, it goes without saying.
If I may say something here, I would like to add on.
Sure, please.
Yeah, actually, you brought up a very important point. Google Initiative and Data Leaks is a company which is in India, I know, and I think they must be doing it world over. They've started this free fact-checking workshops first they started it for journalists, then they started it for journalism students. Now they've started it for the masses, so that even a lay person, a person who's just an internet user otherwise, can learn. And they are very simple tools, they are free. And this is just a one-day workshop, one day, not even entire day, it's like 4 to 5 hours workshop, wherein we can learn small tools to check everything, but even in spite of that, I am from the field of mass communication. I've worked as a journalist, I'm teaching also. But I think that power of social media is so much that even the professional journalists, everybody, before checking the fact, they start reacting to it. This sort of, instant reaction sort of theory which applies more to everybody knows, that you have to read beyond the lines, they may be fake. Even I have seen professionals, I've seen systems, governments given into the fake or miscommunication which is spreading on social media, in spite of having been trained, sensitized, knowing this, as you rightly said. So I don't know how to do away with that. So I would need your intake into that.
Thank you so much. That's such a great sharing. It is so true, actually. Even professional journalists are struggling to find ways to communicate in a kind of positive, peaceful manner, right? I mean, they get sucked into this need to sensationalize or be the first to do the scoop. That's what they call in journalism, isn't it? Put the first news article out, and it may be actually false information, disinformation, in fact, but it is about what sells, isn't it? And unfortunately, professional media, legacy media has succumbed to that. It's really trying to feed into the desires of the masses in order to survive, because on the one hand, they're struggling with being taken over by social media, right? Where there's a whole other discussion about journalism, professional journalism, traditional journalism, and where it stands now, right? Whether they can even continue, is there a death of that kind of journalism today? And so, in order to keep afloat, traditional journalism has been has been really forced to take on this kind of role, to put forward news that will excite people and so on. I'm involved in another project that looks at suicide reporting, actually, and we've been telling the media to perhaps stop being so illustrative in their reporting about suicide, because that just perpetuates it. There's this whole copycat syndrome as well, right? When you read about how someone, attempts this, then there is a tendency for one to, want to attempt it as well. And there's research showing that this has been the case. And so we've been trying to get, the media here, particularly in Malaysia, to just, kind of stop reporting in that manner. And just to state, perhaps, if necessary, the information that, such and such had happened, but not to be so graphical about it. In Taiwan, if I'm not mistaken, and in Hong Kong as well, when suicide takes place, they even, do graphic visuals and post it on the newspapers. And so, all these are very negative impact, and we're trying to get that to stop. But again, it's so difficult. Media organizations and journalists actually tell us, we want to, but it's difficult. Sometimes we can't because it doesn't sell. There needs to be more information embedded in it and so on. But this is one way of giving them then a toolkit to say, look, perhaps change the paradigm, change the way it's being presented. There is a suicide, yes, but those with issues that need, that have, kind of mental issues, emotional issues, for example, provide that support instead in your news report, in your article, rather than focus on the suicide itself, focus on caregiving. And perhaps that's the way to approach it. So that's, one way of, how we can, get people to rethink how they use the media and how they report news and facts, etc. Right. So let's see, I'm scrolling. Okay. Yes, Lillian.
Hello, thank you, Joanne. Sorry, I'm used to call people by name without titles because this is the way we do in Europe. And so I wanted, regarding the issue of suicide and all of that, there is an important issue that although social media has lots of advantages, but there are also inconveniences, like regarding sexual violence, okay, and cyberbullying, and there is something in also sexual violence through social media, that is sexting and all of that. This is because, as we all agree on, is that it's very accessible to anyone. All the platforms are accessible and all of that, and it is easy to get. Like, we can have a mobile, we can have internet and all of that. And the most important thing is that there are no consent forms for using private or intimate information about people. So those who commit suicide, yes, we can do campaigns like awareness and all of that, prevention, but the term of suicide is much further than that, because those who were sexually abused through the internet would end up by suiciding because of the psychological impact that cyberbullying or cyber aggression, grooming, and all those kinds of sexual violence through the internet and the social media would have an impact on their quality of life. So this is an important thing also to mention. I don't know if you were going to talk about the negative side of that, but the misuse of the social media and the communication and all of that would lead to really very negative results. Okay, this is, I wanted to point out on that, because this is part of the general sexual violence that would be, especially on teenagers and girls and all of that. So because this is really dangerous. I myself, my Facebook account was hacked, although I don't do any politics and anything on that. And it was because my mom passed away. I had even the picture of my mom in it. I was not posting anything, but it got hacked, and I don't know. But finally, I could recover it after 2 or 3 months. Also, the misuse is something that we have to be aware of, and really make use of the social media in the context of peace building, or all the positive things. We would prefer to make it expand faster. So this is an important issue as well. And the thing is, there are no limitations. And now with the pandemic, we were relying on the internet and the social media just to communicate because of the lockdown, and it was not possible for us to take courses except for those online. So and the other thing is also that lots of digital communication would interrupt the social communication. People now are not talking. We go to the restaurants, if we have accessibility to the restaurants, and we see 3 or 4 people sitting together and holding their phone, their mobiles, and not chatting. So the virtual communication made people do less natural and social communication. So this is also a negative side that really we would need to work towards awareness and to address this issue.
Yes, thank you, Lillian. You raised such fantastic points there for us to think about. And truly, how do we use social media, and how's it taking over our lives? And of course, then following from what what Irfan had asked about, how can we then counter this to promote positive aspects, which results in peace, because there's just so much of negative over positive, right, with regards to the internet. And so I think it's important to just, hold on to that fact that, even a single message of peace can spread. It may spread slowly, but it will spread. And there are various people who have tried this as well. And I will show this after the break, actually, using the various tools that we have. And, hopefully, we can be enlightened a little bit after that to try and use these same tools as well, and to become these kind of peace builders on social media. It does seem very very gloomy, very negative sometimes when we think about it, but it doesn't mean that we can't change this paradigm, and we must constantly try and strive to do this, right? And so I think we're up for a break, actually, but before we go on a break, I'd like you to think of a hashtag during your break and a peace message along with it. So hashtag and a peace message. And come back after the break with a marker and a pen, or marker pen and a paper, and we're going to try and do something. So think of a peace hashtag, okay, that you can come back and share with us. And I'm also going to post a link for you to log on to. And initially I planned this for about 4 groups, but I think we can all go onto this link, and you can attempt this during your break. You can, sorry, if you can, there you go. If you can go onto this link and look at what is there. There are there's the outline and there are instructions what you can do in each of the boxes. And so, I've asked that people go on that link, and if you can, I see some of you are already on it. You're asked to put in where you're from in this world, perhaps a time machine section. If you could go back in time, which period would you go to? I put some of my examples there. I'd like to perhaps go back to the 1970s because of the music, so I can, dance at Soul Train. Anyway, then, if you want to attempt this other section about the techno-optimist or pessimist, is your country techno-optimistic or techno-pessimistic? You can take a post-it note, double click on that side and a post-it will appear, and just put your country in there. Is your country leaning more towards the techno-pessimistic ways of using social media or the techno-optimistic ways of using social media? And what are the kind of peace building initiatives on social media? And then of course there's a little GIF tournament there if you're interested during the break time. Find a GIF for the expression spill the beans. You can click on the images on the left and type in spill the beans and type in GIF and select an image if you like. And then there's the 12 S words of social media, which I mentioned earlier, and you can click on that, click on these tickets there and select 3 S words or 1, it doesn't need to be 3, that best depicts your country, how your country uses social media positively to serve as a tool for mobilizing citizens and to defend democracy. Yeah, I've put my own examples there as well. And finally, if there are any existing social media peace messages and hashtags that you can think of, and this is not your own, this is not the one that I asked for you to do earlier, but this is something that's already existing. So in Malaysia, we have clean and fair elections. There's a hashtag spread love, hashtag Bendera Putih, white flag, and so on. Yeah. So anyway, just have a go if you're back from your break and you just want to play around with this. You can please feel free to enjoy this mural that I've created for you. Okay, right. So thank you, everyone. I'll see you in about 15 minutes.
Yes, 15 minutes break.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll resume at 11.
Yes.
Okay.
11 a.m.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, see you then. Hi, everyone. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hi. I see there's lots of activity happening in the mural room. I'm going to try and share that screen. Some of you are perhaps only starting to get familiar with this platform, which is fine. We can build it as we go along later on as well. Yeah, just pick out, if you can see here, just pick out a location where you're from and add to it on the map. Let's see what you've got here. If you could go back in time, which period would you go to? The time where time no longer has sense. No, I'll stay. Okay. The red carpet for Star Wars premiere. Yes, I totally understand. 1990s, because it was a time of hope where people believed they could change the system. Fantastic. Ah, okay. Lovely. Please add on to this if you can. You will find that time, I guess, the period that you want to go to back in time would be a time where it isn't as chaotic as right now, isn't it? There's always a nice point in time that perhaps we want to go back to, and maybe that's to start with, to get us starting to think about, you know, where we want to be today as well. Definitely ancient Greek. If you want to explain it further, just, you know, turn on your mic and tell us, you know, why you'd want to go back in time to that time. Okay, techno-optimist or pessimist? Okay, someone put Malaysia as positive, actually. That's good. I've put it as pessimist, and perhaps there's always this balance. Yes, Malaysia in between. There's Spain on the optimistic side as well. That's good. Yeah, so feel free to just double click and you know, a post-it will come up, and then just type your country on it, where you want to place it. Okay, well, we can revisit this later. Peace building initiatives on social media. What are the existing peace building initiatives by government, civil society, activists in your country? I mentioned this earlier. We set up a fact check lab to verify information and counter disinformation. So we've got this disinformation playbook. And it's accessible to everyone who wants to verify information or to post something that they're unsure about, to get the team to fact check for them. There are other examples here as well in Malaysia. Penang, Aliran coming up with press statements, yes, organizing articles and webinars. That's very true. Especially for the young as well. Yeah, young people have attended a lot of these webinars. I've been to some as well. In Nigeria, peace education activities. Feel free to you know, elaborate on this. At self level, positive, negative, positive, need more effective, agreed upon cyber ethics or laws or any variable that will influence attitudes desirably. Yes, indeed, cyber ethics and laws must be effectively put in place. Indonesia, someone is still typing there. Okay, I'll let you finish. Okay, what else do we have? All right, so during the GIF, during the break, we had a GIF tournament, and I've placed some here. So if you click on this link here that says images, you can type spill the beans GIF and click enter, and all the GIFs will come out, and you can select one. But that was to do during the break. So anyways, for those of you who've done that, you can select one and say post it here. And so we've got a few GIFs here, and you know, I was trying to pick one or two, well, three actually, as a winner. I'll pick this. For now. Oh, that's a cute one. Okay, spill the beans, tell the truth. Yeah, but look, this is what peace is about as well, and this is perhaps one way of doing things. It doesn't always need to be, you know, straightforward messages that perhaps, like we've discovered, may just bore people, right? I'm not saying that peace messages bore people at all. I'm not saying that, but again, you know, how do we find interesting, attractive ways? How can we use this medium, this tool that we know so well? We use GIFs all the time, right? We use memes all the time. How can we use it to, you know, propagate peace? Yeah, share a GIF, for example, create one maybe. All right, and so, you know, something that is perhaps lighthearted or perhaps talks about telling the truth and counters disinformation in an alternative manner. Okay, so I'll let you play around with this as well before we picked the 3 winners for the GIF tournament. You can do that later, I'm sure. And then we have this, the 3 S words, the 12 S words of social media. Right, and some of you have actually posted some examples here that positively is used positively for mobilizing citizens to defend democracy. And so this is taken once again from Lisa Search's reading, the prescribed reading. And some of you have given some good examples here. Speed, searchable, simple, yes. Swift development. Politicians are quick to use racial cards in social media and frog jumping when their position is threatened. So this is a negative way of using it, and that's certainly fine. Well, it's not fine to use it in a negative way, but that's a good example I meant. Social confidence, both #Lawan and #Kerajaan Gagal reached 200,000 people of tweets, but unfortunately not easily to be politically mobilized. That's true too. So there's a good and bad here, isn't it? A positive, negative, social confidence, having the tweets go out and having reached so many, but then again, it's not necessarily easy to mobilize people. Perhaps it's important to analyze why this was so, right? Why didn't the tweets mobilize? Perhaps in a different time it would have. Bersih, for example, the rally that I talked about earlier before the break, that mobilized thousands of people to go to the streets, perhaps because it was not during COVID. It was, at a time whereby people could actually physically assemble. But actually, during the #Lawan time, there were other posts that was circulating on social media telling people that although you can't be here with us at the space physically, you can send masks, for example, you can send sanitizers, so you can keep us in your prayers and your thoughts and all that. And so, there were other messages being sent out to civil society. Speed, what's news spread like wildfire, actually among the boomer generation. Yes. And yeah, you can continue adding to this space. Great. And so finally, here are some of the social media peace messages and hashtags that some of you may have come across in your own country. #Lawan, Kerajaan Gagal, #Kerajaan Zalim, #Youth for Peace, #No Development Without Peace, Sayang Self. Yositeku, what does this mean?
I believe you.
Oh, that is very, very good. #I believe you. Could you tell us a little bit more about this hashtag, Alexandra?
Is the hashtag I thought for the group in our last session we had yesterday, no, 2 days before, and it's because it was a group rape, and yes, everyone was very empathic with this situation, and the feminist movement a big mobilized everyone in Spain, and we use this hashtag in social media to.
Fantastic, thanks, Sarah. That's very, very nice. Okay, so I'll keep this here, and once again, you can go on to this mural site anytime you want. And I'll stop sharing this for a while. Okay. Right, and so here we are back in our screen. And remember, before the break, I asked if you could think of a hashtag and a peace message and write it on a piece of paper with a marker pen. So if you could all scribble it in, if you have a hashtag peace message of your own, it doesn't need to be something that is already being circulated on social media in your country. It could be something that you've just come up with. If you can quickly scribble it on a piece of paper, I've done mine, and it's called Peacebuilders Unite. And hopefully that's us. Okay, does it come out in a mirror or non-mirror manner? You should turn it around. Nara, what does yours say?
It's love nature.
Love nature. Oh, lovely. Okay. Great. So please do this. And if you can turn on the cameras, we're going to take a picture of all our hashtags before we start the second session.
I don't know. Mine is backwards.
Is that okay? You got to go to video setting and turn it around, mirror my video, like turn that off. Mazidham, if you could take a screenshot later or something of everyone holding up the hashtag, that'd be fantastic. Lovely. And if you can unmute and say what your hashtags are, while keeping it up so that Mazidham can perhaps take a picture.
Support, love, peace.
Thanks, Aya.
Save the spectacle bear.
Peace building education.
Why? Mine is backwards.
Lovely.
Peace building education.
Yes, hashtag peace build. Peace build what education, Julius?
Peace building education.
Peace building education, yes. Oh, Raninta, one piece for peace. One piece for, wow, that's so creative.
Oh, I wanted to make a hashtag that rhymes. So since the word union or unity has been commonly used, so why not I substitute it with peace? I mean, it kind of rhymes.
Yes, that's a great idea, Raninta. Hold on to that. One piece for peace, fantastic. Abdullahi, what do you have?
Yeah, I have peace contributes life.
Peace contributes life.
Yeah, sure.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. What else do we have? Lillian, what's yours?
It is live, love, laugh. It has to do a lot with peace, but it doesn't have the word peace in it.
That's the way sometimes to go about it, isn't it? Because sometimes you use the word peace and then, you know, there's also even a stigma that's attached to the word peace that, you know, haters would use that against anybody who call out for peace. So live, love, laugh. That's fantastic. Thanks, Lillian. Conception. Peace is possible. Hashtag peace is possible. Yes.
And mine is peace is love.
Peace is love. That's so nice. Thank you, Enes. Anyone else? Ah, we got a lot. Yes.
Afifa. Peace Lovers United. It's coincidentally like yours.
Yay, Peace Lovers United. Love it. We've got a lot on the chat as well. Hashtag Peace Humanity United. Manoj says hashtag Youth for Peace. Alexandra, hashtag Save the Spectacled Bear. Yeah, okay, I got it.
It's backwards. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's the camera setting on Zoom. No worries. Okay, and let's see, what else do we have? I'm going to remove my image. Hashtag, Sarah wrote, hashtag making faces. Wow. Sarah, why making faces?
Okay, maybe Alberto can help me. But in my master, in this master of Castellón, the philosopher Vicente Martínez Guzmán, from the master, thinks that we can make pieces in different ways. In Spain, in Spanish is hacer las paces. yeah, so translated in plural. Pieces. Is that there are different ways to build a piece in your daily life or in more big way. And yes, I use it works.
That's lovely. Really, I mean, you know, sometimes it's about looking for these sort of alternative ways of, you know, putting it forward, like we mentioned earlier, the One Piece for Peace, and no, sorry, the Live, Laugh, Love as well. Yeah, it's about, you know, finding other ways to send that message. Yeah, so hashtag Peace Humanity, that's there as well on the chat bar. Hashtag Peace for Life. Hashtag Making Pieces. Yes, the hashtag Peace is all that matters. Peace unites us, peacemakers, peace forever, peace among us, real peace. Fantastic. Ranita, yes, you can change your hashtag. All right, fantastic. So, you know, let's hold on to these kind of messages that we have, right? And I think what's important then is to think of how we're going to you know, put this in a kind of campaign later on, if we like, yeah. How are we going to send out this message? How are we going to make it attractive, exciting, and get people to latch on to it, yeah. And most importantly, I think what we want to now stamp here is that we have to do something, right? And you have already done it. You've created a hashtag. And so now you can't just keep it in your file or in your house or in your room. You've got to do something about it. That's the challenge, right? Because keeping quiet and being silent it doesn't necessarily, you know, propagate peace all the time, right? Sometimes it's about going there and countering the noise that's out there, right? The noise that is about inciting hate and violence, all right? And it's about pushing that back and making that smaller than, you know, what are than the other kind of peace messages that we have. How are we able to do that? We need to unite and do that. As utopian as that sounds, or as cliche as that sounds, yeah, it is not cliche. We do need to unite with this. So I'm going to continue by sharing my screen while you can have a go at that mural, if you like, in the background. Okay. So that's of course, social media is a behavior modification system. We know that. We know that it's biased against facts, against meaningful conversations. It's constantly about a difficulty in changing someone's shared reality that is focused on war and conflict rather than peace. One way is actually to push for more transparency by recognizing that people have the right to know, right to information, because in any conflict, the lack of information can make people desperate, restless, and easy to manipulate. And that is that gap, you know, that window when, you know, when we realize that there is conflict and there is a lack of knowledge. That is that moment where we can push forward and come in with, you know, information or with peace messages that will get people to think in other ways before another great storm comes and takes over, you know, and manipulates the mind, yeah? So when there's conflict, always find that moment where you can actually impact upon it. Because yes, people will be desperate at that time and restless. And, you know, the involvement of the state as well is important, yeah? So I know some of you here are journalists, some of you here may even be from, you know, the public service system and from the state perhaps even. And it's important to push, for the state to push for transparent regulation. And that's crucial, yeah, without putting stress on freedom of expression. I can't say this enough, I've said this earlier as well. when we push for regulation, it is not about suppression. It's not about, circumventing or putting a stop to freedom of expression. Yeah. So people need to feel safe enough to discuss and to discourse. Yeah. And therefore regulations need to be flexible. It needs to be future-proof to make platforms safe by design. You and I don't know, some of you may have, some technical skills, computer scientists and so on. I don't have it, yeah. But we can work as academics, we can work, or civil society, or in any capacity that you are, we can work with platform companies. We can push for them to make it safe by design, yeah, and to make it also flexible, yeah. So that again, if we push hard enough, like what Facebook did, they responded to the call of the state, yeah, the government, and of also civil society. I'm not glorifying them in any way, but like I said, if you push hard enough, it may work. Yeah, then they had put in place this log profile and this other system where you can choose to allow for people to comment or not on your post. So these are the things we have to push for to ensure that the platform is safe by design. And as we know it, disinformation is a complex phenomenon. Yeah, it cannot simply be regulated away. Therefore, without regulating content, transparency measures, resources, and processes must be put in place to protect public health, to protect democracy and fundamental rights. So we also recognize that this isn't just a problem with platforms. It's not, you can't blame it all on, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and so on, but it is actually a societal problem that requires all actors to play their part. Yeah. So how can we use social media or media to address emergent behavior, and without being technologically deterministic here? Right? And so here are some of the key patterns that we have encountered. Right? And we know that conflicts are being adapted to online spaces and vice versa. Right? Alongside rapid economic growth, cosmopolitan urban hubs and tech-savvy young entrepreneurs, social media is also a home to various forms of violent conflict as we know it. And you've also mentioned it earlier. So as improving telecommunications infrastructure and inexpensive smartphones extend internet connectivity far beyond affluent elites, social media has actually become a venue for reconfiguring violent action in the world, globally. Yeah. So by adapting to social media, violent groups increase their ability to control the narrative of a conflict, to manage operations, and to recruit new members, and we know it. They are able to explore new ways to raise funds, to gain mass support, to vilify opponents, and of course, to also organize acts of violence. And, Enas had shared earlier how this was done in a positive manner. So online spaces create new opportunities for both men and women who might not otherwise be active participants in violence to actually join and support conflicts with just a click of the button. And we know how easy it is as well. Another key pattern is that each online space offers unique and dynamic terrain. And this is very important because in any given conflict zone, for example, the form of online space is affected by local conditions. So we're talking about levels of literacy in your country, for example, the existence of common languages, the penetration and speed of internet connectivity. All this plays a big role, and it's very context specific. Yeah. So the prevalence of smartphones as well, whether that country adopts using technology in that manner, I would assure you that looking at the statistics, actually many countries have, or all countries have actually caught on. It's just how intense and how much people actually invest in smartphones, and these days it doesn't even cost anything really. And then there are those who don't have those kind of access, not by choice necessarily. Maybe it's been removed from them. Maybe it's to silence them. Yeah. And so that's the other problem as well that we have to be careful about. There are also local preferences for particular applications. and the nature of the conflict itself that you're talking about. So when you look at, the case study, when you look at the conflict, let's say, you must also consider the context, isn't it? That's what this is trying to say. It's about looking at the languages that's being used, the level of literacy. Are you posting in English or in a different language, Malay, perhaps in Malaysia? Who are you trying to target then? Yeah. And will it reach them? Do they have accessibility and so on? So what is their most popular platform? A simple search on Google would tell you. I mean, if you're in your own country, you would know which platform is the most popular amongst your own society and community. But let's say you want to target another community, you can go online. Google Analytics, Google Metrics would let you know which platform people go on and which is most popular in which country, and then use that platform, right? You wouldn't, if people use Facebook a lot in a country, you wouldn't, use, say, Twitter. Yeah, Twitter is not so much a Malaysian platform, to be honest. It's more of a Singaporean. But a lot of people use Twitter in Singapore. More Malaysians use Facebook. But then it's also age specific. So if you're targeting young people in Malaysia, then it's TikTok actually, and actually even Instagram. Facebook, they say, is for the older generation. Hence earlier I said, you're revealing your age, but I'm kidding. So, as an example, a violent majoritarian mass movement, the repeated targeting of communities by organized networks, is all aided by algorithms, like those on Facebook. They create a dense network for ethnically homogeneous groups that can be applied to prepare the ground for further polarization. Telegram has been actually favored by some groups, as I've mentioned earlier, for the privacy of its end-to-end encryption. Yeah, so it's very private in that form. And so by allowing anything from one-on-one encrypted chats that keep no records to group communications in the tens of thousands, Telegram has met the needs of many, even armed religious extremists, such as insurgent leaders, etc., who have affiliation. If we recall what happened in the Philippines, in Mindanao, for example. Yeah, this was used. Telegram was used in this instance. Yeah. So as new online platforms and tools emerge with these sort of distinct features and capabilities, motivated actors who are already used to switching between multiple platforms will quickly adapt. This is how people adapt. This is how adaptable we all are on media, on social media. And with a bit of experience, savvy actors can actually exploit the contours of an online space to gain advantage over their opponents. And in recent times, we've seen actually even the government, political leaders using this. So proponents of violence use a range of tactics that are truly carefully tailored to the online context. Yeah, generating content intended to misinform, publishing coded or even explicit hate speech, attempting to silence opponents' online voices through harassment and threats, and posting inflammatory messages from high-profile leaders that are shared widely by followers. So even more sophisticated methods are also used, and maybe you've encountered this, including what we talked about, the sock puppet accounts with false identities, bots that create the illusion of a mass movement. Yeah, sometimes we see, why is it that everyone's liking and tweeting and wow, that's gotten 10,000, 20,000, 500,000, 1 million likes? That's all bots. But how will we know that for sure? Yeah, the websites that have been developed to mimic authentic news outlets, but public fake false information as well, right? Some of these techniques were first developed for influence operations, to be honest, yeah, backed by the states outside of Southeast Asia, and by cyber warfare combatants before being picked up by local groups. So local groups now have the knowledge and the skill to also use this. So what initially started off, perhaps small in a small way, has now just become widespread. Everyone knows how to create and set up bots and create this kind of deception in the world. And then we come to the third pattern, the conventional peace building mitigation, and research efforts, which has not kept up with online interactions and the implications for conflict. And here, I'd like to raise this idea that an examination of existing peace building and conflict mitigation programs reveals that few civil society initiatives actually focus on online dimensions of local conflicts. So a large proportion of these programs have been actually implemented in, if I can give you an example, in Myanmar, a country which opened up to civil society initiatives just as the internet was taking off, and where the links between violence and online space have actually received intense international attention, including widespread media coverage of Facebook users' role in setting the stage for majoritarian movements. Here's an example, right? Myanmar blogger and activist, this guy here is called Ne Phon Lat. He launched the Panzaga campaign. It's called the Flower Speech campaign. If any of you here are from Myanmar, then you can turn on your camera and be proud of this, actually, because this blogger set up this Flower Speech campaign to oppose the practice of attacking a person or group on the basis of race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. And this is an excellent example of a counter-speech effort encouraging positive, peaceful social media use. It is a prominent early example of attempts to actually mitigate online polarization and incitement to violence. Yeah. So, you know, this is something you could do as well, which the hashtags that you've just put forward. So platform companies, the fourth pattern here, they are unprepared to respond to the increased use of their products by violent actors in conflicts. And that is so true. And that is a big threat. Yeah. So despite real progress in the past 2 years, companies that operate online platforms and messaging products like Facebook, Telegram, Twitter, Google have struggled to develop internal mechanisms to manage the growing problem of hate speech, abuse, and the activities of organized violent groups. As I've just mentioned earlier, it's almost impossible to truly regulate this, yeah? And we looked at what Facebook was trying to do earlier. However, platform companies are still finding it difficult, yeah? The landscape of conflict includes many localized and small armed groups. That's why it's difficult to regulate. Some of which also act as community benefit organizations, ethnic or religious networks, and political parties. So the tactic of these groups actually vary widely and actually change rapidly depending on local demographics and operational needs, precluding a one-size-fits-all response. Yeah, so you know, you never really know. This is emergent behavior, yeah, that we can't necessarily address in a one-size-fits-all manner. It's so context-based, so context-specific, yeah, and it changes all the time. So in addition as well, state actors may themselves be protagonists in violent conflicts and may attempt to use their lines of communication with platform companies to silence the voices of peaceful dissidents. And this was also what was shared earlier as well. I think it was by Afifa and someone else, by Azad, I think. So, you know, there are still numerous inconsistencies, gray areas, and blind spots in both policy and enforcement, as well as delays in gaining the attention of platform moderators in urgent situations. So local peace builders, mediators, and conflict mitigation experts are actually important partners to platform companies in drafting policies, raising awareness, and enforcement. But such a relationship requires consistent engagement and trust. So, you know, really, we need to constantly build on this engagement with these platform companies and push for these changes to happen. If you have any thoughts, any kind of comments, please, once again, feel free to stop me there. But there are more recommended actions, yeah? And, you know, it's a lot of kind of words here on the screen, but what it really is trying to say is, you know, if you look at the first one here, NGOs, academics, public, private funding organizations, etc. We need more evidence-based research. I think the whole idea is to encourage for an evidence-based society. Yeah, everything should be fact-checked. We should want that, we should desire that, we should demand that, we should push for that. Yeah, independent data collection and monitoring, attention to local context, to the language. Why? Because we need to speak the language of the people that we're trying to, mobilize. Yeah, that we're trying to get to think about peace, for example. Yeah, what sort of languages are we using? Is it truly what people are also saying within the local context? Are we speaking their language? So more attention needs to be placed in that area. Okay, lots of research should also continue. Actually, there is a lack of research in this manner with regards to how data is being disseminated. And that's why many of our questions cannot possibly be answered. Earlier, Irfan, etc., asked those questions, right? We're still searching for these answers. And that's because there's not enough research in this area. How can we contribute to peace building using social media? What are the indicators, yeah, of how online contributors feed into violence, network polarization, online hate speech, online recruitment and advertising by non-violent groups? All that needs to be found out. We need to find that out. We need to disclose it, actually, if we're going to do anything about it. If we continue to let it get disseminated within the social media sphere, then we were not doing our part by disclosing what's really happening behind the scenes. Yeah. And then if you look at the second one, governments, there's the role of the government then. So earlier it was kind of NGOs, academics, then we moved to the government. And what's their roles? Yeah. What are the recommended actions there? With consultation and external support, they should develop balanced policy frameworks that promote inclusion and shared norms. So governments should align policies governing online speech and communication with frameworks that preserve privacy and freedom of expression. So governments can actually use policy levers to hold platform companies accountable, including transparency reporting, enforcement of community standards against violence and conflict, and support for peace building. Of course, the counter argument is that what if governments are using this for their own purpose and inciting, violence and hate? Then, how will they even, push for this with the platform companies, right? But here we have that hope that governments can be pushed to do that, and that governments can develop and maintain consistent lines of communication with platform companies. When new rules are proposed, civil society proposes new rules, and governments can actually engage the wider community, consult them, and present them to these platform companies. And I'll show you later an example of this actually being done. Some of you may be familiar with V-Taiwan, actually, and that's a good example. I'll show it to you later on. Then there's a creation of new norms and standards through consultative approaches as well that needs to take place, right? Governments can work domestically, regionally, globally to develop new norms and doctrines that actually condemn the use of social media platforms for the instigation and organization of violence by any actor. They need to stand up and do that. We need to push for them to do that. Open consultation and independent oversight will help to address concerns that governments will use new standards to limit freedom of expression, stifle critical voices, or suppress peaceful opposition movements. Yeah, so that's important, this open consultation with the government. And then we come to the platform companies. So we're looking at all these different actors and their roles, right? And so platform companies should refocus policy development and monitoring to support local leadership and public engagement. So here we need a voice for local stakeholders in platform policy development. So platform companies should establish consistent dialogue and auditing mechanisms that give a voice to local stakeholders, hire local people and others on the ground expertise to guide this process, including women and women's networks. These days, women, are still quite underrepresented on the online space, to be honest. Yeah. So the need to invest in and adapt to the diversity of languages across the world, the region, can go hand in hand with greater voice for local stakeholders. So, it is about working with, people in the local scene, to do this. It's not just for platform companies, and policy developers. It's also for us when we have a campaign to set up, who are the local stakeholders? How can we identify them? How can we work with them, right? And so there also needs to be support for local capacity building and training. So platform companies can actually support capacity building and training to enable this kind of local level multilingual reporting of hate speech, misinformation, suspected disinformation operations, and thus improving the quality of intra-platform reporting and then building user trust. So trust is so important there. And finally, all parties, all of us, should support innovation in peace building, in conflict prevention practices as well, and we do so by digitizing conflict reduction. And what I mean by this is that all actors, including governments, international agencies, NGOs, should aim to understand the specific role and influence of online activity as a core part of their conflict prevention and reduction efforts. So peace builders and mediators should apply their deep understanding of local offline context to develop appropriate peace building methods for online spaces with rigorous ongoing evaluation to determine new best practices. Tools are needed also to support analysis of the digital terrain. So how are we building this toolkit? Are we providing practical guidance, online resources and training that could help the various actors, civil society, to navigate the digital field? So digital literacy, right? So some people may say that that's important, and that is true. Smaller, more traditional organizations can learn from the experiences of more tech-savvy peers and partners. So if you have a knowledge in this, I think you need to share it. Certainly find a way, find a platform to promote this knowledge of how to navigate the digital. Governments also need to support to enable them to engage in peace building, and of course to ensure that security measures are not repressive or in kind of contravention of human rights. And then there is empowering peace building groups. That's so important, that governments should recognize and support the ability of civil society groups to address key drivers of conflict at all levels. And at all levels, by that we mean truly all levels, right? Even young children, do we disregard them? They are on social media all the time. That's where they learn these days during lockdown. Are we empowering them? They actually have great messages of peace. I'm sure you've got some things to share as well, and you've come across some of these examples. How do we empower them? So local groups can also actively engage in dialogue around relevant technology policy, especially encryption, cybersecurity, and policing of the internet. Governments should particularly commit to actually supporting the participation of, once again, women's groups, networks, movements in peace building and in peacekeeping. And finally, to align local research activities and open data collection here. So local actors conducting online counter-speech campaigns, training and awareness raising, online data collection can actually be brought into broader global research efforts on social media and conflict. Have we seen this enough? Where are those kind of research, that counter conflict, in this world today? Where are these research? Are they being broadcasted enough, or are they being kept in a book somewhere, in a journal or some sort? When we know it, when we've discovered something, I think the only way to fight true noise is to give this counter narrative, is to broadcast it out. And so, of course, we stand together because there's more, right? There's offering new perspectives, in understanding conflict contexts, amplifying peaceful voices. We need to create new spaces for people to connect and to coordinate and to mobilize around peace. Yeah. What are these new spaces? What, whose voices do we need to amplify? We need to think of these, and then we need to go further into the context, deeper into the context, to identify these things. Yeah. So it's not just something that we kind of think about in a very vague manner that says, oh yeah, social media matters. Sure, we can use it, but how do we use it? It's important to look at context. It's important to look at languages, as I've mentioned, all the other things that we need to think about, platforms. Where are these new spaces? How can we create them? Whose voices do we need to amplify within our community, that can actually shape a peaceful way of thinking that can counter fake news and these kind of threatening narratives. And we need to think and identify these people in these spaces. So in essence, what we then do need is this new media ecosystem, isn't it? And this new media ecosystem involves civil society as a source of legitimacy. It involves platforms, yeah, to engage user algorithms to actually help rather than to destruct the human minds. And of course, the state, the involvement of the state is so important here, right? Through transparent regulation, and of course not to oppress. So this is, of course, just to give you an idea of the social media landscape in 2021. I've only really put on 9 icons earlier, or 9 of the mobile phone application logos on the Mural platform, but look, there's so many. And as I was researching this and putting this on the slide today, my son had actually, come next to me and asked me, how many here do you know of, and how many percent? And so that's the question I'll ask you as well. I mean, how many have you come across? And I'm sure, it would be quite a few, I would say. Definitely everything that's here in the center, in the core here, going outwards. And it's so wonderful that this particular SYSK, where I've got this from, they've done this every year, social media landscape from 2018, 2019, up to 2021, and it changes every year. So if you want, you can kind of Google and look at how it's changed. But it's nice because they've kind of also sectioned it a bit to see, that these are the kind of apps or platforms for publishing. These are used for networking. These are the apps for collaborating. These are the platforms for discussions, messaging, and for sharing information. So this really helps because once again, it gets us to think about where we can actually broadcast our messages to, where we can broadcast our campaigns to, who we can identify within these platforms, and so on and so forth. So yeah, there are indeed many. Perhaps it may shock yourself as well if you start to look at this and start to identify with the various platforms here. So as promised, I'd like to highlight an example of what I would deem as a way forward in peace building. And this is called V-Taiwan. This is a digital democracy at its best, really, in my view, and was established by a civil society movement called G0V or GOV. It followed GOV's major role in the 2014 Sunflower Movement protest, if any of you remember that. And the process was designed as a neutral platform to engage experts and relevant members of the public in large-scale deliberation on specific topics. Yeah, so this is where, if you remember, we talked about Manuel Castells, we talked about Henry Jenkins, and they talked about this network society, social network. This is where it comes in to play here. Yeah, this is inclusivity and. Hi, Salman. No. Okay. So, the process itself is designed to facilitate constructive conversation and consensus building between diverse opinion groups. So if you click on it, right, you would actually, well, yeah, if you open this on the side, I don't know if you can, but this link will be here. But what it does is it gets everyone or stakeholders involved, right? A diverse group of opinion leaders, civil society, and so on, and it builds on this. Yeah. So it does this by creating stages, including an initial objective stage for crowdsourcing facts and evidence. Yeah. And a reflective stage then using a mass deliberation tool called poll.is. Yeah, which then encourages the formation of rough consensus. Yeah, so again, it's important. It's not to say that, when you come to consensus, everyone agrees to something, but, firstly, it's important to have people included. Firstly, inclusivity is important, isn't it? In peace building. And then it's about getting the voices heard. It's about involving everyone, within society, yeah, from the businesses, from the corporates, from the government, NGOs, activists, academics, and so on. So, firstly, is to start with the objective for crowdsourcing facts and evidence. So that's the other important thing as well that one needs to have, the facts and the evidences, right? We talked about all this, disinformation and fake news and untruths. So the facts and the evidence need to be presented in this objective stage, and then they move on to a reflective stage. Yeah, and they use this tool called poll.is, which encourages this formation of this rough consensus here. As you can see, 92% agreed. Finally, key stakeholders are invited to a live streamed face-to-face meeting to draw up specific recommendations. So this is another important follow-up to this sort of exercise, right? Where people are able to actually speak up. It's not just about clicking and then, you're a bot, who knows, right? But it's then coming on to that live streamed face-to-face meeting and, providing recommendations and working on, a solution, for example, or a way to manage the issue. So it's about citizens providing technical expertise. It's about collective deliberation. It's about then citizens coming back together to develop proposals and to scrutinize proposals. And this is what we need to strive to achieve. And I think I mentioned this earlier. I think Singapore is also doing something like this, Indonesia even, and I believe Thailand, if not mistaken. But if any of you have firsthand experience doing something like this or being involved in something like this, please do enlighten us. But what I wanted to also say, so here's a great platform for people to use, and civil society can come together and they can share the ideas and recommendations and so on. But let's not disregard the opportunities to use media to counterframe violence and hate through the more familiar things that we are used to, right? Entertainment, okay? I call this counterframing, but look, here it is. There's gaming that we can use to promote peace and solidarity. There's satire that we can use, cartoons, memes for peace, yeah? I mean, some of course are political memes, but in a country like Malaysia, whereby it's high, and I mean, in terms of censorship and so on, it's quite impossible to go out there and say something against the government. And so people have turned towards this sort of alternative ways of expressing themselves, and they use political memes. I mean, well, memes to actually express themselves about what's happening within the politics. But also there are memes for peace. Yeah, memes, of course, those of us who are Star Wars fans would really relate to this, where Yoda says peace is the road to everything. Or I think in his words, it would be the road of everything is peace or something, right? He always tells it the other way around. And then, of course, this nice chap here that says, someone made a meme of this, TikTok gets banned in the US, everyone on Reddit says, finally. inner peace. So again, these sort of messages can be very useful, even through satire, through cartooning. Yeah. Unfortunately, our cartoonists in Malaysia were not spared as well from being held up and arrested because of their cartoons, even though it was satire. If you're familiar with this piece of cartoon artwork here, this is Zunar, who's done a lot of cartoons on Malaysian politics. Maybe Pak Alberto might know him, but anyways, that's he's posted cartoons on the Malaysian Sedition Act, for example, that truly impedes on people's freedom of expression.
Can I say something?
Yes,
in Jordan, we call it like the ugly truth, because you use it like a sarcastic way, but it's truth thing that you deliver in a way, but in a sarcastic way, but it's everything. It's like the ugly truth.
Yes, that's right. Thanks so much. Certainly. And sometimes this is one way to go about it, right? Because although it is the truth and it is harsh, but it is presented in a way whereby you can choose to kind of laugh about it, perhaps, and sometimes that helps. Yeah, rather than be confronted with images of truly violence and what's happening, that can be very traumatizing for many. Perhaps this is one way of putting it. So yes, you've mentioned that very well. Then there's gaming as well, yeah? So we can use games to promote peace and solidarity. And here I'd like to actually call upon a few examples of how some gamers have used online gaming to promote peace and solidarity. And look, gaming has actually taken over the world. I mean, I don't know, your age, my age, I am not a gamer, but my son is. And yeah, I mean, self-professed. And then gaming as well is just taking over. What are children doing when they're online? They're not attending classes, they're gaming. And then gaming has become a multi-million-dollar industry as well. So really, there's so much to explore with regards to game and how it incites violence and hatred, but also then, here are some examples that, does the opposite.
I think video game that premiered today may be like none you've ever seen, perhaps because its developer faced challenges few of us will ever experience. Jan Crawford introduces us.
For Luau Mayan, this is more than a video game. It's a personal story.
To survive, you have to keep going.
Joanne, there is no sound.
Yes, no sound.
Introduces us.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize for that.
This is
Can you
more
revisit?
It's a personal story.
To survive, you have to keep going.
Thank you.
25-year-old knows about survival. His family fled war-torn South Sudan. He grew up in a refugee camp in northern Uganda.
So there was no electricity.
Yeah, there's no electricity at all. There was no school. There was nothing.
But it was there in a refugee office when Mayan was 12 that for the first time he saw a computer.
Or like, wow, it clicked in my mind that I want to use that one day.
And he did, thanks to his mother, who saved $300 as the camp's seamstress to buy him this used laptop. He walked 3 hours a day to charge it.
What was driving you?
the opportunity to be alive, because with that, it helped me understand that we can do whatever we want to do.
Inspired, Mayan taught himself how to write computer code and eventually developed a rather unique video game.
And you call the game Salam, which means peace.
In the game, players take on the role of refugees fleeing violence. It would become the ticket out of the camp for Mayan and his family.
My family left the country.
Today, living in Washington, D.C., this former refugee now leads his own company.
It was so hard.
Did you ever think about giving up?
Yeah, a lot.
But you didn't quit.
My mother helped me.
Your mother, she believed in you.
Yeah. So
his mother is his game's main character.
And how do you win?
Well, you can be able to like grow your family, like have that peaceful environment.
So winning is when you find your place.
Yeah, peace. Yeah.
In a game and in life. Jan Crawford, CBS News, Washington.
And a story about a mother's love.
Okay. So that's one example of how this refugee had actually developed a game for the purpose of propagating peace, whereby you win when you actually find your place of peace in the game.
Joanne, could you please send us the link on the chat?
Sure.
It's wonderful. It's a wonderful peace building example.
Sure, I will do that.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Yeah. I do have a few more examples actually.
We know that video games are great entertainment, but can they also help build peace? Today, 44% of the world's internet population play games online, and the industry is experiencing rapid growth in many conflict zones around the world. In the Middle East, where many of the world's conflicts are centered, 65% of mobile internet users have games on their devices, making it the game industry's fastest growing region. Ever played Peacemaker? In this exciting game, players become the head of state in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to try to achieve a resolution. We spoke with Eric Brown from Impact Games, the company behind Peacemaker, and he said gaming provides many benefits to the peace-building community.
One story from very early on in the experience was we had a group playing it, and when they started having a discussion about the real issues, they would say things like, well, when I was the Palestinian president, this is what I did, and things like that. And so in terms of all those things that people like to talk about in games and empowering them, things like that, and making them feel like they're learning their experience and having those opportunities to explore, those are all really good things to see as well.
Peace Park is another skill-building game where players have to restore peace in a communal park by understanding visitors' interests. The designers behind this game said that they were wary of trying to balance overall goals with a genuinely interesting game. Nino Nanatashvili from Elva told us that during the development of Peace Park, they actively involved the gaming community to help design the levels. Other examples in this emerging space are Peace Superheroes and Search for Common Ground's Battle for Humanity. These games aim to challenge enemy targets, shift audience attitudes, and encourage positive social behaviors such as civic engagement, conflict management, and tolerance. This is Jeff Walsh, reporting for Peace News.
Okay, and I think finally, this is a quick one.
Imaginary island on the brink of starvation. Millions of them will die unless food is airlifted to them. This is the premise of Food Force, a free internet download from the UN World Food Program that helps children understand the challenges of getting food into war zones.
Excellent. Straight down the line.
Spokeswoman Jennifer Parmalee says the game has been translated into 17 languages.
It helps them feel like they could be part of a solution. That's something that's empowering and fun for them.
Another video game, A Force More Powerful, demonstrates nonviolent strategies to help remove oppressive governments. It takes place in a fictional city reminiscent of Belgrade in the former Yugoslavia. 10 years ago, the game's designer, Ivan Marovic, was a leader in a nonviolent movement calling for the removal of President Slobodan Milosevic. Marovic was a university student who organized demonstrations that led to the ouster of the president. Milosevic resigned after disputed election results in 2000. He was arrested and tried for war crimes in The Hague, but died before the proceedings finished. Marovic incorporates tactics into the game, which he says can be used to fight oppressive governments around the world.
Like strikes, boycotts, civil disobedience, street protests, in order to force the regime to either concede or to step down.
He says another aim is to win the hearts and minds of the people.
And to actually cause loyalties to shift, and also to increase the enthusiasm of the people that are on your side.
In this virtual world, the focus is on the conflict in the Darfur region in Western Sudan. There has been a sharp decrease in violence there over the past year. But after years of clashes between rebels and militias supported by Sudan's government, 3 million people have been displaced. An anonymous person created the scenario in the Darfur game video using Second Life, an internet site where users can build their own virtual world and talk with others through voice and text chats. Scott Sexer works for Linden Lab, which created Second Life.
Someone has gone in to create an environment that allows others to come in and see what is taking place in Darfur, listen to a family who left Darfur and is now in a refugee camp.
Sexer says he can communicate with people from around the world since text chats on Second Life can be translated into many languages.
I've talked to people from Japan. I could type in words that would automatically be translated in Japanese.
Sexer says there are many other scenarios on Second Life that promote democracy and conflict resolution. They include a courtroom where people can learn about legal systems in a democracy. Deborah Block, VOA News.
Right. So maybe you have some thoughts to share. But maybe useful. And once again, yes, of course, we can, tweet and post messages of peace. But what's better is that, we use those platforms that people are using. And the last example was someone, in their language, because the system just kind of translates what you're typing into that language, and then in that way, one can further communicate beyond just the realms or the barriers of our language that we use. And so there's a lot of embedding of narratives as well, the stories that you saw over there in that final game. And text chats and the ability to communicate, and then with the previous game as well, with regards to this role play and how you would be able to promote peace within a particular setting and so on. What are your thoughts?
This is very interesting, Joanne, because all the time we make the link between games, video games, and violence, and all the strength that the gamers use to kill each other could be used building peace. So it's a very interesting approach of a communication tool to create peace and conflict resolution and transformation.
Right. Thank you, Alexandra.
So thank you for this example. It's very enlightening.
Thank you. And certainly that's something that I'm striving to also try and stamp the fact on is that there are lots of negative connotations attached to media, social media, and especially gaming. But really, all these platforms can be used in the positive way to counter frame, to break through noise, and to promote peace. There's even a little video here Dance for Peace, which is, quite, I thought it was, again, very interesting because, it was getting people to all over the world to come together to dance for peace. Yeah. This is very similar to the ALS Ice Bucket challenge. So use music, use dance. And get people all over the globe to participate. The cat reminds me of Alberto's cat. And so the video goes on, and it gets people to join the dance. Send us your videos, dance for peace. Yeah, and so something as simple as that can actually spark participation. Remember earlier we talked about this, network society, this participatory culture. These sort of videos can perhaps and initiatives can spark those kind of participation. Yeah. Sorry, I'm gonna just. So really, we've actually come to the end of the session today. And, I'd just like to conclude by saying that, once again, I think we need to explore, some ways in which social media can be used to foster social cohesion, democracy, and peace processes, particularly through the mobilization of participation and the formation of identities in a network of distributed yet interconnected social actors. Yeah, so that's important. We need to encourage a generation of evidence-based practice. We talked about that earlier. We need platforms that enable users to check and verify information. Better still, automated fact-checking. I don't know if that's possible, but that would be great to tackle disinformation. Currently we have the fact check lab, for example, which is verified by volunteers, but it may be possible one day to push for AI, through perhaps algorithmic manipulation to actually automatically fact check everything that goes on to social media. As utopian as that might sound, or maybe you think that's wishful thinking, but again, it can be done, and we shouldn't lose hope in that. So tied to this is also the access to information, which is an integral part of our right to freedom of expression and information. Civil society groups and individuals need to detect, expose disinformation and hate campaigns. Yeah. Another thing is digital storytelling, which was something that Alexandra actually talked about earlier, to bring forward narratives from communities, showcase a good side of communities that the world has never seen. A community that actually upholds gender equality, perhaps. Yeah. Where are these narratives? Are we showcasing them enough? All right. Teach digital literacy to stop digital inequalities which still exist. Yeah, because of course, as you can see now, those who are already marginalized have become even more vulnerable online. Yeah, so how do we reach out to these communities and groups that are increasingly vulnerable and increasingly targeted? We need to speak the language that people are using today. We looked at that earlier. We need to spread positive messages of peace. There also needs to be a multilateral, perhaps multi-stakeholder approach or involvement, whereby civil society, businesses, etc., work together to find the best solutions. This is important. Remember we talked about Taiwan, that example calls to mind. We need to break through the noise. As social media users and content producers, we need to find alternative ways to grab the public's attention by using compelling colors, symbols, other visual stimuli that trigger brain responses. I mean, at present, we are drawn in by stimuli such as friend requests, for example. Hi, Delaware. Did you want to share something? No? Okay.
No, sorry, I mistakenly.
Okay, no problem. No problem. And so,
I'm driving that.
okay, so yes, so at present we are drawn by stimuli such as what friend requests, status updates, notifications of likes, comments, and these things encourage us to post more and show allegiance. Yeah, it keeps us emotionally engaged. It urges us to declare our emotional state with emotions such as angry, sad, care, love, and so on. How do we use these tools? Yeah, we need to use them, of course, in the most effective way possible to grab the public's attention. Legacy media is something that we talked about earlier, and that cannot be separated from social media. Traditional media, legacy media can actually contribute to peace building through indirect activities, right? They need to, perhaps the journalists amongst us, provide non-partisan, balanced information and accountability, and through direct conflict-related programs as well. We need to restore trust in legacy media. So investigative journalism is a way to combat misinformation, disinformation. Yeah. Look, quality journalism today competes on an equal footing with a loud opinion and expressions of bad actors. Media must be used as instruments of peace, upholding good governance by holding leaders accountable as well. So that's where we must strive to go with regards to quality journalism, and not allow for loud opinions and expression by bad actors to dominate the space. It must be used to motivate people to take part in community events, as we've seen, in the examples that I've given, using games, using satire, using whatever it takes as part of the media to get people involved, to join in these kind of community events, peaceful demonstrations perhaps, connect them with others, provide early warnings of violence so that people can avoid it. It's not just about giving voices to the elite and the powerful all the time, yeah? Especially for legacy media. They tend to do that, but remember that no voice must go unheard. So there needs to be kind of impartial media that gives voice to people. And if social media can do that, we must provide the space for that. We must provide facts, not just opinions, and information that is as close to the truth as possible, or the truth itself, right? And so media cannot just react to rumors. And thereby, with ourselves, we can't just, react to everything that we see online in that manner. So again, be very mindful. We must also be careful not to exclusively consider social media as a liberation technology, social movements. Yeah, neither should we consider social media as a tool for governments and autocrats to stifle dissent and spread misinformation. Social media can be both, as we have seen. Therefore, it becomes more important to understand the role of social media in peace building, as discussed today. Yeah. I'm going to end with this quote. Tadzi Madzima Bosha writes, social media can help spread peace, encouraging dialogue among people from different ethnic backgrounds and nationalities. It can affect perception on ethnicity, change attitudes, and promote tolerance and mutual understanding. Thus, it can bridge the divide between ethnic groups that wouldn't otherwise communicate with one another. And that's important. And I'll end with this final example. I don't know if you are familiar with this hashtag Dancing Man in 2015, where people actually saw this person on a train station and they laughed and, they took a video of him dancing. Yeah. And they were what they call fat shaming him. And they posted this on social media, this person, and said, spotted this specimen trying to dance the other week. He stopped when he saw us laughing, all right? And people saw this post and some responded, ha ha, and etc. Many said it was funny, but many also said, look, that's not funny. That's really not funny. And someone like Cassandra then stood up in this instance and she tried to make a difference. And she posted, anyone know this man or who posted this? There's a huge group of ladies in LA who would like to do something special. And what they did was, they went online, they tried to track him down. They finally found him in London, and they invited him to this party. And of course, it was not just ladies, but thousands of people at the party. It was also attended by some celebrities, etc. But what also started on the side was a GoFundMe campaign for anti-cyberbullying based on this incident. And so, again, this was the party that took place, okay, in the end when they spotted him. And I'm just going to show you this video before I finish.
Hello, very nice to meet you. Welcome. I know you so well already, and I've just met you. But before, I feel like you're just like such an inspiration for everyone who just wants to get out there and dance.
That's what it's all about, get out there and dance. Stop me stuff.
So feel free to learn this dance moves from him. Stand up and dance. These were the people who stood up for him.
I mean, Australians are pretty good dancers, but me, not so much. So do you think you could maybe teach me a couple of moves?
I will teach you. I've got my one move, and it'll be my pleasure to teach it to you. Get down and get dirty.
I'll follow your lead.
Let's hit it. You do your dad dancing at a wedding.
All right.
Wiggle down.
Okay, we've reached the end, so you can stand up and dance as well.
And then wiggle.
It's like you own it.
You've got to. That's your thing. This is ours.
Invisible string. Oh, I see. Oh, like a puppet.
Now we're pulling out the big guns here.
You ready for this? All right. Whoops. A bit hard. You get the idea.
My move is probably this. You kind of like shake your arms. Yeah.
Just cross. Hit. You're doing on wherever the hit is. Yeah, right on the downbeat. Oh, yeah.
This is what I do at the club. It's so good.
Yes, mentoring, Delali.
Yeah, yes, yes. All right, now we turn. Now it's a good job.
I am back. I am so sorry. But just one last line I wanted to say, he gets this big day, and, imagine if people didn't stand up and make a difference, if people didn't, come and, do something different. and change that paradigm. If people were absent in the conversation, if they didn't step up and say something, then what would have happened, right? So that's why we need to be active on social media. And there's so much good that social media can bring. So just don't think of the bad all the time, but use it for peace building, as a tool for peace building. And let's be instruments of peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joanne. It's amazing. I have to have a long chat with you about helping us in deep.
My pleasure.
Yes, we need to be a bit wiser in terms of our social media, and yeah. But thank you so much. It was just absolutely wonderful.
Thank you. So if anyone has anything to feedback on, comment, or share, feel free. I don't know if you have time for that, Pak Albert.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the participants.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is that, Joanne, what I've been saying to the participants is that we're only giving them a snippet, just a very short introduction to the various topics. And while the course itself is only 8 days in total, but it's a continuing project that you can always come back, keep in touch. We can contact. So, I mean, this is what social media is all about, right?
Yes.
So we can keep in touch this way, and I'm trying to work out. I need help with dancing, so
You haven't got the grandpa move yet, I'm sure. Still quite flexible.
No, I don't. Yeah, I'm still.
I could help, Alberto.
Yes, I know you can. You are into dancing as I gather. So, and do you have any more questions?
It's not a question. Thank you very much, Joanne. It was an excellent lecture. Just one thing I want to ask you is that the link, the videos you shared with us today was excellent, and I want to review them. But I believe you're going to upload this video. However, we probably need a link.
Yeah.
Because we cannot copy and paste over the video.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I will be sharing the link to the videos and the link to the Prezi as well, so you can review the entire Prezi.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Toshi. Any other points of view?
May I? May I? Thank you, Joanne. That was very interesting, especially like to conclude the session. It's a good way to stand up and stretch our legs, because really being pinned in front of our computer, we spend too much time in front of the computer. I tell people to just stretch, adjust their posture, do some shoulder exercise, and this is a way, like really it's stimulating and promoting more well-being, because really we need to do that, especially in the pandemic time. We spend too much time in front of the computer, and we need like to break this screen that is limiting motion, so thanks for bringing this up at the end of the session.
Thanks, Lillian.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Thanks.
Yes. So anyway, we don't have any more comments.
May I say something?
Yes, of course.
It's not a question, but I really want to just say that it was a really, really wonderful presentation, because being from the same field, mass communication, John has come up with some really deep, intense concepts, but the way she made it so easy. I mean, I would like to just say that it's wonderful because there are deep discourses and debates in the mass communication and journalism field. But she put it so nicely. I would say that people would think over it in a simple way, because most of academician, what we end up doing, we talk too much into discourse and concept that people sort of stop relating to it. They lose the idea of what we started with, but wonderful way of presentation. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed the session thoroughly. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Any other? Well, you can say positive things too, positive feedback. I'm sure Joanne will appreciate this. And I forgot to mention that Joanne was also a fellow, right, of London School of Economics? Or
Yeah.
was it?
Yeah, that's right. That was during the recent summer break.
That's right.
Yeah, that was quite enlightening as well. That was when I did that little research about whether people thought that member of parliament should be replaced by artificial intelligence, and it was shocking. We did it with 6 countries actually, people from Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and it's amazing how frustrated people are actually with the system of governance, and how they are actually looking to technology, to save the world kind of thing. I don't know if that really is the way to go forward, but certainly maybe that's where the world is heading to, whether we like it or not. And I think that's something that we need to think about as well. But if I may say, thank you all so much for your fantastic contribution, for participating, for sharing so much, during the session. I am so humbled to be in the midst of such wonderful people, journalists, PhDs, lecturers, academics, civil society, activists, and so on. In your own right, all of you are truly so inspiring, and it's wonderful that you've signed up for this and you've come to this session and then shared so much with us. I'm truly grateful.
Thank you, Joanne. So on that note, on behalf of the ICCTP, we want to say how much we have enjoyed your very engaging, presentation. And since I know your work, I'm not at all surprised. So, but having said that, I would also want to say that I was not surprised at your excellent presentation, but you have actually gone beyond that, and I was even sitting there even more, I would say I wasn't surprised, but I was thoroughly impressed. So thank you so much, Joanne, for this. And I'm sure we will be in touch.
Yes, thank you. I certainly hope to be in touch. I will post those links that you've asked for on the Moodle page in my class. And don't forget your hashtags and, do something with it, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay, you take care. We'll go to the other room.
Thank you very much.
Just for a few minutes, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Joanne.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Alberto, Dr. Lim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lillian.
See you at 2 o'clock Indonesian time.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Professor. Bye-bye.
Please give us anything to be in touch.
Okay, thank you, John. Can we have Joanne's email ID? We can be in touch with her.